What is going on, everybody? Welcome to the MLB Deeper Dive here at Stokastic, presented by Sleeper. I'm Eric Lindquist, filling in for Josh Engelman. His internet's out. That's what happens when you bank $80,000, $90,000 in MMA. You're smashing MLB slates. Your internet just goes out randomly still because, you can't have everything in this life. But speaking of big wins, my guy, Adam Ship My Money Share down there. Go follow him at Ship My DFS on Twitter. That'd be great. 20K golf bank. What are we doing in the streets? What is going on in your life, and how can I get some of that?
Yeah, no, it was nice. I'd come close last week, I think round one also, and DJ shit the bed, and I didn't get it. But yeah, so it's nice to get that. It always feels good to win in sports that like you don't know anything about.
Mm-hmm. It feels great.
Yeah,
I had a 10K win for Rainmakers UFC. I know nothing about UFC until about 6 months ago. I started carrying because I'm like, these cards are very cheap compared to what NFL cards were. And the contest looked pretty good over at DraftKings for it. And Nunes goes completely ballistic, and I win by one anyway. So it was beautiful. Check out the Rainmaker Streets. Good stuff. But yeah, I know jack shit about that just as much as you probably know about golf.
Yeah, no, absolutely nothing about golf. And MMA is also in that category for me. Like, I know a decent amount now because I got into it during COVID and have paid attention to it since. But like, I still don't like know fighters really. If I've seen them a lot, I'll have an idea like, do they want to wrestle or stand? But other than that, like, that's about it. And I've done well in MMA, so yeah, always enjoy that one too.
I know I want Armando Ribas to just absolutely murder Macy Barber tomorrow, so I can tell you these kind of things.
I haven't looked at anything.
Don't forget, early slate tomorrow. Early.
Yeah,
I think it watched like 8:30 a.m. my time. Yeah. Gonna be just a brutal
I'll
morning.
be doing, I'm sure Neil's gonna have a great time as we do the MLB strategy show, and I'm working on MMA.
I will be tuning into that one. Adam. Yeah, he's a good pitcher. You could fade him if he has ownership. You should check out the Sims tool. You could just turn it to the Sims tool for every single response if you wanted to.
Right. Yeah, that's true.
Speaking of Nate, Kaiser Soze, $50. I got first and won $2,000 yesterday thanks to Adam. I used the Padres and Twins on my FanDuel lineup. That was a good decision. Congratulations. Maybe Adam knows things from time to time. I haven't noticed, but congratulations. Adam, any response?
I was tweeting out my article and I missed what you said. I think you said he won $2,000, in which case,
and he gave you credit of all people.
Oh, yeah, I missed it, and I don't have YouTube open yet.
It's gonna be one of those shows, isn't it?
But congrats, because I heard the win part. I didn't hear anything else. Okay, now I'm reading it. Padres and Twins, FanDuel, sweet, congrats.
We got Jordan Klein producing. Excited to have Jordan Klein here. Excited to be filling in for Josh Engelman. Only 10 MLB games. So again, not too crazy. I know that you did the morning strategy show as well. Anything that's changed for you drastically before we start diving into this slate?
I don't really think so.
Yeah, we didn't have any starting pitchers. Yeah. Normal stuff. That kind of makes it fun. We're going to be running clean, and obviously we're going to be using a lot of the great tools and things that we have over here at Stokastic between the top pitchers tool, the top stacks tool. If you want to be firing it up in the lineup generator, we'll talk about that here in a little bit. Maybe put a couple of those together. It is a Coors Field slate. So let's have at this one. Game number one, Mets, Phillies. And a pitcher that it seems like I get all the time when it comes to DFS, Kadai Senga here. He is sitting there with the second best top 2% odds that we have over on DK, sitting at 10-2 salary-wise on FanDuel. He's a little bit cheaper than that of Logan Webb and Lucas Giolito, but how are you planning to utilize him against this potent Phillies lineup? But there are definitely strikeouts to be had.
Yeah, I mean, it's a scary matchup, and it's a scary park. You have an elevated implied run total here. All of that stuff working against Senga, but we just don't have much ownership coming into him. We still have him projected for about 8% ownership. And if that holds, and I say if, because we have seen a couple of times this year, he's down to 6% now on DraftKings. I just refreshed, but we've seen a couple of times this year with Senga specifically where he's projected for low ownership and you sort of see the field react to that and he comes in more popular than expected. But he looks like a really useful piece here. And it's not that I think he's likely to have a really good game. It's that he has the highest strikeout percentage on the slate. So he gives you that upside. But this is a slate where you have plenty of just completely mediocre pitching, and you have the field just flocking to the guys that project a couple of points better than everybody else. But from a range of outcome standpoint, Senga's just as good as anybody here. He can still go out there and have a massive start given his strikeout stuff. The only real problem he's had this year has been walks. And, obviously that's a real concern. It drives up your pitch count. It puts extra guys on base. But when you look at the other pitchers that people are going to pay up for on this slate, and we'll talk about them, as we get to them, but Logan Webb getting 22%. He's really good, but it's a tough matchup with Arizona. Chris Bassett hasn't been any better than Senga this year. Good matchup against Oakland, though. Joe Musgrove getting a lot of ownership against the Nats. Bieber striking out 17.5% of hitters. Giolito is facing the Red Sox. There's no pitching on this slate that you look at it and say, oh, yeah, this is clearly a spot that I can't get away from. There's no concerns. And so the fact that the best strikeout pitcher is only getting 6% ownership makes him really interesting. I did my Sims video that's available on my Twitter. I did that earlier, and Senga was showing up as the highest exposed pitcher in those lineups. And the reason, and it does, your interest in Senga should also have to do with what you're doing from an offensive standpoint.
Yes.
In the Sims tool, what was really standing out was we were still getting to a lot of the Angels, a lot of the Blue Jays, the chalk stacks that people are going to go to. But Senga is a high upside way to limit your total ownership and not sacrifice ceiling. So if you're fading like the Angels, you're fading the Blue Jays, and you're going to some of these less likely to succeed teams, then there's less of a need to get the Senga. It's not to say he's a bad play then, but there's less of a need because then you can take on, the pitching that projects a little bit better, and you're different than the field anyway. But if you're going to the best bats, Senga's one of a couple of pitchers that really stood out at ownership as somebody that I think is worth taking a chance on if you're paying up.
Yeah, I feel pretty good about the fact that, at least when you have Kadai Senga out there, when he's walking dudes, you're probably going to be in some trouble. But even still, he's finding ways to strike outs regardless. And that kind of elevates your floor a little bit. Of course, he's in the worst matchup when you compare him to Joe Musgrove against Washington, Bassett against Oakland, Schmidt against, we'll talk about Clark Schmidt, my God. But Shane Bieber's K rate's disappeared. Logan Webb ground ball rate has been awesome, but a difficult Arizona matchup. I just like the K rate. I will take that every single time. And what you alluded to, Colorado, just getting to Coors Field, getting to those Angels bats, it definitely is the top way I can think of just alleviating a lot of the ownership that's coming with it, especially when they're showing up in the Sims tool at such a drastic rate. So I'm with you. And
one thing, it just came up in chat, but definitely something to keep an eye on. There are weather concerns in Philadelphia, and it looks like they could be getting rain during the game, which is, worst case basically for a pitcher. It's clearing out of Baltimore right now, and it looks like it's supposed to get into New York later, but Philly could be getting some game time rain, which that is, an added risk. But if the weather looks the way it does right now, I would go ahead and take a chance on Senga, at least me personally. If you're more risk averse, there's nothing wrong with saying, look, I don't want to deal with a pitcher that's in a tough spot and also might hit a rain delay, 3 innings into the game and be done. But that's something, else to keep an eye on.
Yeah, we'll definitely keep an eye on that for you here as well. I thought the Yankees had some weather that we were looking at too. Is it raining over by you in Baltimore?
It's been raining all day. It's starting to clear now.
Okay, because that's what I was looking at on radar coming into this one. I have some interest in Seattle bats as well as just Seattle as a bet. So fire that one up for the people. But either way, anything else you want to talk about with Senga? And then I don't want to talk about Taijuan Walker.
And one other thing with Senga too, we just talked, spent a lot of time talking about him as a contrarian pitcher. There are a couple other guys you can do that with. And on a slate like this, I really don't mind the idea of just paying down for pitching and saying, there's a good chance that all these guys at the top score 14, 15, 16 points, and I can just have really good bats. So it's not to say Senga is the only way to differentiate, but he is one of the arms at the top that does stand out as just not getting as much ownership as his strikeout upside warrants. As far as Walker goes, especially at he's 9,400 on FanDuel. I thought that was his DraftKings price tag. I didn't remember that.
I just saw your brain break. That was fun.
Yeah. I was like, I've looked at this slate 100 times today, and I never realized it was $9,400. 7,700. He's an okay pitcher, but tough park, tough matchup with the Mets. Not a great strikeout pitcher. Only about a 20.5% K percentage. Mets are a tough team to strike out. So not much interest in Walker outside of just maybe a random lineup here or there.
Yeah, if he shows up in 1 of 150, I would be okay with it. 2 might be exceeding what I want.
He's 2% owned. If you stack the Angels and you end up using Taijuan Walker at 7,700 and 2% owned instead of The hell? Instead of Clark Schmidt at 23%, that's new from this morning.
I was going to say the Clark Schmidt stuff, we'll get to it. It's absurd. Just give me Emmett Sheehan at these ownerships. My God.
Right. Yeah. I was just like trying to quickly grab an example of who in that range is getting ownership. I did not expect Clark Schmidt to be the example I came up with. But the point being, like, pitching isn't very good on this slate. So there's nothing wrong when you have popular offenses with just like landing on Taijuan Walker here or there, but it's not like you're going out of your way to get to him.
Philly, WRC plus of 102. Obviously, a lot of that sample size is without one Bryce Harper. He kind of matters in the context of the world because generally he's pretty good at hitting. You do get Brandon Marsh in addition to this lineup. So 3 decent lefties. He's been hitting for some hard power, which is a little bit surprising. You get Bryson Stott in there too. Philadelphia, a potent offense on the other side. Do you have interest in them against Senga?
Yeah, I mean, in tournaments, I think they're fine. Coors Field obviously makes the slate just different because you have the Angels in particular, but also the Rockies pulling so much ownership. But it makes it so you can get to these teams that have, 4.5 to 5 implied run totals at pretty low ownership. And Philadelphia is only pulling 4%, 5% chance of being the top stack. Senga's allowed a little over 1 home run per 9 innings this year. He's had more issues with right-handed power, 191 actual ISO and a 184 expected ISO to righties, only a 102 expected ISO and a sub 100 actual ISO to lefties. That's not to say you can't play Schwarber and Harper, but it does make Turner, Castellanos, Real Muto look a little bit better. Alec Boehm as well.
How about the Mets just to round out the entire game? You get somebody in Tommy Pham who started to emerge a little bit. Look at his March, April, May, pretty brutal. In June, over a 1 OPS. Hi, how are you doing? Welcome back to the program, Tommy Pham. Any Mets interest against Walker? Because I think that's probably where my interest lies in this game.
Yeah, very similar interest, I think, to the Phillies. They are a little bit higher in top stack percentage. They're also getting a little bit more ownership. You have plenty of power in this lineup, and you're getting a nice park upgrade. Walker is just basically an average pitcher, 168 expected ISO to righties, 173 to lefties, 20% K percentage to righties, 21% to lefties. He's not somebody that you're super excited about taking bats against. He's not somebody that you're really afraid to take bats against. The thing that stands out with the Mets, though, and does make them look pretty good is that they're cheap across the board. The Phillies, are pretty expensive at the top, but for the Mets, you have a $3,700 Starling Marte hitting second. Nimmo's only $4,100. The most expensive hitter in their lineup on DraftKings is Alonso at $5,100, followed by Lindor at $4,500. That's nothing, especially when you can balance it out with, a $3K Tommy Pham, a $3,500 McNeil. Alvarez is $3,600 as a high upside catching option. If you are, I don't know, paying up for pitching for some reason or paying for expensive one-offs and you can't afford Alonso, you have Vogelbach at $2,200 batting fifth. So the value component of the Mets makes them look pretty appealing. They have about the same implied run total as the Phillies, but they're just a lot cheaper.
Anything else for this game whatsoever?
Nope.
All right, we go from one pitcher that's really low owned and I have interest in to another pitcher who's very low owned, lower owned actually, and I have a lot of interest in. It's Logan Gilbert and the Seattle Mariners going up against your Baltimore Orioles. Interesting spot here for Logan Gilbert. You do have some lefty power that exists, and lefty power still plays up in this park. It's righties that have a hell of a time there. But he's facing off Gunnar Henderson, who started to come alive with a 51.1% hard hit percentage now for the season. Adley Rutschman's been awesome all the time. Santander, Ryan O'Hearn, and Hicks, my God, how is this happening? Austin Hayes, who's probably the most slept on hitter, something that I think you alluded to on twitter.com once upon a time. It's scary at the top of this lineup, but it's low-owned pitching. It's a guy with a K rate that I can get behind. How do you feel about Logan Gilbert on today's slate?
Yeah, we're on the same page. I just don't understand this gap in ownership. I understand the risks here. This park does play up left-handed power still, like you said, and the Orioles do have plenty of it with Henderson, Rutschman, Santander. O'Hearn's been hitting well all season long. Hicks figured out how to hit again since coming to the Orioles. So,
nice.
Obviously, O'Hearn and Hicks are small samples, but those three at the top are all legitimately good. O'Hearn and Hicks may or may not be, but you're talking about 5 lefties in the top 6, Hayes being the only righty. And like you said, extremely good this year. I'd actually pulled it up last night because my mom was complaining to me about Hayes not being a finalist for starting in the All-Star game. And I kind of wrote it off and was just like, on the list, the only guy there that clearly doesn't belong is Kevin Kiermaier. I'm not going to complain about Alvarez and Trout and Rosarena and these guys being ahead of Hayes, but he's actually 4th among all outfielders in the American League with at least 200 plate appearances. The only outfielders with a higher WRC plus than Hayes this year are Judge, Alvarez, and Rosarena. Like, that's it. He's been fantastic, and he's also only 3,900. But the point being, yeah, it's a dangerous matchup for Gilbert. It's a negative park shift, all of that. There's no pitcher on this slate that you can bring up, and there's not something wrong with them, whether it's just that they are mediocre pitchers or they have tough matchups. So I don't really get why Gilbert's only getting 4% ownership, just like I don't really get why Senga's getting such little ownership. Even when you look at projections, we have Lucas Giolito projected for 15 DraftKings points, Gilbert 15 DraftKings points, Bieber 15.5 DraftKings points. Like, these are all functionally the same play, but you have Bieber getting 23% ownership, Giolito getting 9%, and Gilbert getting 4%. A $400 price difference shouldn't account for that.
Be fair, Kevin Kiermaier, just to protect the good honor of him, 9 outs above average, which is the dumbest thing ever for a center fielder. I mean, it's purely defensive.
I mean, nobody is voting based on defense. It's because he has an entire country voting for him. The same reason Brandon Belt is second in DH voted.
Oh, Jesus Christ. Okay, well.
Which I didn't realize, actually, that Belt had turned it around and he's actually having a good year. But
yeah, still, that's egregious. I mean, he's got a 202 expected batting average. What?
Did you see Belt's quote about it? It was awesome. No, he got asked about like being second in DH voting, and he said that's how you can tell the voting is rigged. The fact that Ohtani's getting more votes than me when I'm a better hitter and a better team leader.
Better pitcher too.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I'm glad we're on the same page there. Senga and Gilbert, if you're using the Sims tool, and I definitely recommend everybody use that every single day if you have access to it. We also have the lineup generator, which I will talk through here in a second because it is awesome. And there have been some huge wins of late utilizing that. But Gilbert, Senga, two of my highest owned pitchers, think that they're a great way to still get Coors Field exposure. How about Kyle Gibson on the other side going up against Seattle? I have relatively zero interest.
Yeah, he's in the Taijuan Walker bucket for me. The Mariners do have strikeouts in their lineup. They also have power. One nice thing is that most of their power hitters are right-handed. I will say I love the way the Mariners set up their lineup today. Kelenic leading off, Cal Raleigh hitting fifth. The two real left-handed power bats they have in this lineup. So Gibson's been pretty good at limiting left-handed power this year. Right-handed power, he's been good at limiting it, but a lot of that's the park. 202 expected ISO to righties, 156 to lefties. So, kind of a neutral matchup, but a nice park upgrade for Kelenic and Raleigh in particular. I don't really see much reason to get to Gibson unless, just like with Walker, it's baseball. This guy's really low owned. Let's hope he throws 7 innings.
How do you feel about the Orioles on the other side?
Yeah, some interest in both of the offenses, but not a ton. Gilbert's a really good pitcher. There's nothing wrong with getting to Henderson, Rutschman, Santander. They have gotten expensive, though. We've seen Henderson's price tag jump like $1,200 in the last week. You can balance that out by going to O'Hearn and Hicks. Hayes is clearly underpriced at $3,900, but Gilbert is a really good pitcher. This is a Coors slate. You do have plenty of bad pitching on the slate. On the other side, Seattle's somewhat interesting, but I think both sides probably more so mini stack candidates for me. Go to the Angels and mix in Jared Kelenic and Cal Raleigh. Go to the Angels and mix in Henderson and O'Hearn, something like that. More so than like loading up on full Seattle and Baltimore stacks.
Anything else from this game?
Nope.
Pay attention to weather though too. Maybe that.
Yeah, I think weather here should be fine.
Okay. Well, something that I know to be fine is definitely the performance of our lineup generator here of late. It's been absolutely absurd. If you go down the line on Twitter, if you look at anything from the Stochastic Hall of Fame here, we have guys taking down the relay throw. He took a single bullet. Ryan M. Carter took a single bullet, turned it into 50K, utilizing what was coming out of the lineup generator, took some of the exposures, put together his lineups, and took down that money. That is great stuff. That can be something that is not just an outlier. We've had our own Jordan Frank in the NBA streets be able to fire off a single bullet and convert $25 into nearly 80K. You have this 50K off of $15. These aren't pipe dreams. These are things that can happen utilizing the tools and content that we have here at Stochastic. Check out the lineup generator. Would you like to go with some contrarian lineups today, Mr. Adam Scherer?
Sure. And Ryan Carter said, I know Adam was thrilled for me. Yeah, I came in 9th that day, so I'm still a little bitter about it.
You're fine. You just been golf. I think that made up for a lot.
Yeah,
come on. Use your run good in golf. Get out of here. Let's do some 5-3 stack types too while we're at it. Let's fire up some 20 max goodness for the people. You can save up to 20 lineups here for a CSV and utilize those directly. But I'm very excited to see kind of who we end up with. this is kind of an easy way to streamline the process if you are just getting into DFS. And we are getting some of the best lineups with top ROIs in terms of like our Sims tool and everything else. We are going to just cut out the riffraff, help you out to just get you some positive EV lineups right from the get-go. That is what the lineup generator is designed to do. Let's see, Jordan Klein, what do we have over here on the screen? What did we end up with? Contrarian. Contrarian 5-3s. It's going to be fun. I want to see who we end up with in terms of exposures, because I have a feeling Coors Field with some contrarian pitching has kind of been the name of the day. Let's save up to 20 of those puppies. And look at this. Hunter Renfroe, Brandon Drury. I got Luis Renifo, Taylor Ward, Logan Webb showing up at the top of the board here. Chris Bassett as well. Let's see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 Angels in our top 10 exposed players. How do you feel about that, Adam?
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. And it looks similar to what was showing up in the Sims tool when I did the video as well. Not only getting to a lot of Angels, but using that bottom of the order to get a little bit less ownership and also save some salary with Stefanich, with Renifo, Chad Wallach showing up. So, yeah, very similar. I know that Josh and Lofty have both talked a lot about how the lineup generator is sort of, it's similar to the Sims tool. It's just, kind of displaying in a different way and cutting out, a lot of the bad lineups that you would have. And so it makes sense that you're seeing a lot of overlap in what's showing up as, the best way to go.
Of course, we also have the MLB Sims tool, which is just phenomenal. I've been using that every single day. It just helps me so much to be able to see directly, uploading up to 2,000 lineups, simulating out what the contest would look like, having my top 150 lineups that you're able to favorite directly on screen. Can't tell you how awesome this is, not just for MLB, but PGA Sims. Oh my gosh, they are so fun to use and utilize. Definitely something that you want to be checking out every single week. Yeah, it's got a higher price point than that of the lineup generator, but I think both of them have a great use regardless. I mean, you can have days. Neil Orfield, Millie Maker winner, somebody who does this in a devout way, is able to utilize the lineup generator as well. So it goes hand in hand. Check out both of those products in that video description box below. And we got the MLB generator put into chat directly by my friend Jordan Klein there. I believe it's less than $5 for your first week when you check that out. So utilize that, my friends. We continue on our merry way. We got 8 games to go. Lots of baseball to talk about. We head to Texas and New York. And what the hell happened to Clark Schmidt's ownership, Adam?
I don't know. Clark Schmidt is someone that I play frequently and wish that I didn't play as much, kind of like most players on Kansas City. But really surprised to see the field projected to get there. Like, I understand he's $7,200. He's got pretty good strikeout stuff, but this is a brutal spot against the Yankees, or against the Rangers, rather, in Yankee Stadium.
Yeah, I'm a little bit confused. Why did this happen? Did the lineup come out? Did somebody get scratched? Did I do something wrong on my end for this to happen? Because Clark Schmidt, there is no way that I would get to him more than I would get to, I don't know, probably half the field of pitchers at this kind of ownership. Clark Schmidt, I would have the least interest in at this number.
I will say that there is a prominent projection system that a lot of people use that is projecting him very well.
There it is. Because they still are clinging to AAA like it's the last chopper out of Nam.
I mean, I think Schmidt's actually pretty solid, but I hate the matchup.
What do you like so much about his pitching profile? 4.36 expected ERA. The sweeper, he's throwing substantially less from AAA into this year. It's still his primary pitch, but at the big league level, that combined with the cutter have been right around a 450 expected slugging. He's not getting Ks as much as I was hoping, 23.3%. It's not like he's a nothing. There's still room for improvement, but for such a touted first rounder, he was taken pretty high in year-long drafts. I'm a little bit surprised to see the ownership coming in against Texas, second in WRC plus against right-handed pitching.
Yeah, it's not. My interest in Schmidt mostly this year hasn't been I think this guy's a great major league pitcher. It's that he's pretty inexpensive usually, doesn't normally get that much ownership. And for his general price tag, for a $7,200 salary, for example, he does have solid strikeout stuff, 23% K percentage overall, 26.5% to righties, only 20% to lefties. But Schmidt's not a guy that I want to play a lot of when he's 20-something% owned against the Rangers in Yankee Stadium. And, again, he does look like one of, I can even buy that he's one of the better pitchers on the slate because of who is on the slate and the price point and all of that. But there's still other guys you can pivot to where it's like, yeah, they're not very good, but they're also not facing the Rangers in Yankee Stadium and they're getting less ownership. So that's sort of the issue for me is you see it a lot on slates like this where, I understand why Schmidt projects relatively well for his salary. And it's just that he strikes guys out, and he's not a bad pitcher, 409 xFIP, so far this year. But from a range of outcome standpoint, when you have him facing the Rangers in Yankee Stadium, there's just not a big difference between him and plenty of other lower owned guys.
Completely agree. Dane Dunning, we're not clicking that button, are we?
5,700. I mean, it's not the worst play.
So is this one of the cheap pitchers you were alluding to, somebody that you might want to be getting more exposure to just in the event that 12, 14, 16 out of the top tier ain't it?
Yeah, like you probably don't have to go that far down all that much, but he's only 5,700. The Yankees are still missing Judge. Their offense sucks outside of like 3 guys. I don't want to get to a lot of Dunning, but if I end up just paying down to 50, paying 5,700 and then getting really good one-offs or mini stacks with my Angel stacks or whatever it may be, I don't think that's a bad approach. Like when you look at the Angels too, I mentioned it in the Sims tool and you just showed it in the lineup generator. You're getting a lot of, Stefanich and Chad Wallach and these guys that actually aren't very good showing up as your highest exposed Angels. You could use Dunning and get those Trout plus Ohtani plus Renfroe plus Drury lineups easier. So, there is some appeal there. He's another one where if you were getting ownership, I would just run the other direction, but he's only projected for 8% ownership.
Okay, that's fair. I just wanted to talk through a little bit of the process. Top 2 value percentage, identical to that of Zach Davies pulling less than 1%, James Caprillion pulling less than 1%. I guess for me, it just always seems like I'm gravitating towards Sheehan from the Dodgers. That'll be fun. That'll be fun. He's actually #good, whereas I don't necessarily feel that way about the other guys who are cheaper. But the ownership, I suppose, is there, whereas it's less than half of it going to Dunning.
Yeah. And I will say, like, when I ran the Sims tool earlier, Caprillion was showing up here and there in lineups. Like, it just – and Dunning is one of those plays where Caprillion, I think, is worse than Dunning in terms of talent. But it's just – you're basically saying, okay, what if just every pitcher scores like 15 points today and I spend as little as possible at pitching?
Caprillion puts up 19 against Philly last time out. It's something that can happen.
Right.
It's baseball.
Yeah, like hitting is still really hard.
Still very, very hard. It's easier to be a pitcher. Again, hit 350, you're in the Hall of Fame pretty easily. Hit 300, you're in the Hall of Fame pretty easily. Wild stuff. Anyway,
have you seen any of the like Pitching Ninja's been tweeting them out, but the like catcher cam for the College World Series game last night?
I did not. I watched like 2 seconds of it.
Okay, it was a great game, but just insane stuff. Like, Paul Skeens throwing 101, and like you can't even see it. Yeah. Like it's just in the catcher's glove before you see it. There was I think it was the starter for Wake Forest threw a changeup to somebody that like the pitch almost hit him. It was righty. It almost hit him, and they have the catcher's view, and like it just takes a right turn basically as you're swinging.
They're so good. And people still want to say that Roger Clemens or Nolan Ryan would be still successful in today's baseball.
They'd probably be successful. They wouldn't be as good, obviously.
That's what I'm getting at. The kids now are so filthy. And again, you have kids coming out of the pen throwing 98.
Right. Yeah, I tweeted that last night. Like it was, I can remember when baseball, like it was impressive to have like a major league reliever throwing, 96, 97. Last night, Wake and LSU are just bringing in guys throwing 97, one after the other.
So dumb. Must be nice. Texas bats against a popular Schmidt. That seems like fun, huh?
Yeah, I think they're really hard to get to. When I ran my crunch for the Sims video, Texas was coming in like as one of the lowest teams in my crunch, just because they are expensive. And when you're paying up, you're preferring Trout, Ohtani, Renfroe over Semien, Seager, Lowe, Garcia, but it is a high upside spot here against Schmidt. He does have some issues with left-handed power in particular, 180 expected ISO, only the 20% strikeout percentage. Going to Nathaniel Lowe in Yankee Stadium is really appealing. Corey Seager is going to look really good. The difficult part, though, is just that they are really expensive at the top.
Hey, Adam, what if I told you Billy McKinney had a 650 expected slugging?
I would guess that McKinney had like 20 at-bats.
It's basically 38 batted ball events, double that sample size. You, sir, are wrong. I don't believe it. This is just absurd. And you have Jake Bauers leading off today. It's still a spot against Dane Dunning, 281 expected batting average, sub 15% K percentage, but I don't know what to make of it. Is Billy McKinney now the new Matt Carpenter? Is that what we're looking at?
So I think the Yankees are kind of interesting as like, again, more so like a mini stack team than a full stack, but they're not getting much ownership. One thing that really stood out to me this morning, obviously you have Jacob Bauers leading off at 2,700. That's a really nice price tag in Yankee Stadium. The thing that I really liked, Dane Dunning's allowed a 223 expected ISO to right-handed hitters this year with a 13.6% strikeout percentage. There's a guy on the Yankees that hits the ball really hard and really far whenever he makes contact, but he doesn't make contact very often. Dunning doesn't miss many bats. 8% swinging strike percentage against righties this year. I really like Giancarlo Stanton in particular.
It's a great shout out. I love that shout out. This is the stuff you tune in for, friends, because again, there are certain things, especially when you're hand building out, that something like that can really go a long way for you when it works out. And it doesn't have to work out very often for it to be a profitable play at this kind of ownership. Absolutely nobody clicking on him or any of these Yankees today. You have, 5% Jake Bauers. That's the highest own we currently have. Going all the way down to Stanton at 1%. I love that shout out. Give me that all day. 71 degrees there in New York. So nothing crazy, but humidity up to 90%. That could be fun.
And to your point about hand building, like that is the kind of stuff, like it's not like I'm bumping up Giancarlo Stanton in the stuff that I run. There's a pretty good chance I don't get a lot of him, but 1% owned, if you just need an outfielder in that price range, Stanton looks great.
Anything else from this game?
No.
Cool. We go to Oakland and Toronto, and Caprillion. James Caprillion on the mound going up against Chris Bassett. Chris Bassett's really, really popular. James Caprillion's not. You said James Caprillion was actually showing up in the Sims for you. Anything that stands out to you there? Just a cheap guy in the bucket of cheap dudes to play Angels?
Yeah, he's cheap. He's not getting any ownership. If he happens to somehow pull 15 to 20 fantasy points out of his ass, you're in a good spot. But horrible matchup. Tough strikeout spot, huge park downgrade. There is absolutely nothing that should make you say, oh, I think this is a spot where Caprillion has success. You're literally just saying like, hey, I got all the best bats. I probably have a good SP1. Now let's just hope this guy manages to get a bunch of like line drives right at infielders.
Yeah, well, hopefully Chris Bassett does that, because right now I'm not getting to him in my last run as I was going through stuff. 37.8% hard hit percentage, 430 expected slugging here. Did you know he also doesn't believe in advanced analytics, Adam?
Yeah, you know who I think probably does is the team facing him that has 5 lefties in the top 6 hitters and 7 lefties in their lineup tonight.
Thank God. That was kind of one of the things that got me. I can't remember who it was in that last Cleveland series where I was like, oh, we are going to the Oakland side now. I can't remember. I would have to take a look. But either way, go ahead and give the people the lowdown on Chris Bassett, why he's a good play, and also why he might be overowned.
Yeah, so he's a good play just because he's facing Oakland. He's an average pitcher, and that makes you good on the slate. But he probably is going a little bit overowned, sort of like we've been alluding to throughout the show, where, yeah, he projects as one of the better pitching options. We have him at about 17 DraftKings points, but Logan Webb leads the slate with 17.2 DraftKings points. And then, like, if you just count down, 10 hitters in projection, or 10 pitchers in projection, 9 to 10, you're still at like 14. You just have so many guys that are about the same very, very similar range of outcomes. He's got a 20.5% strikeout percentage this year. He's got a 4.54 xFIP. He's allowed 1.5 home runs per 9 innings. He's not very good. He's just good enough for this slate. And on slates like this, it's when I typically I differentiate at pitcher. Most slates you talk about differentiating at hitting because there is more volatility in hitting than there is in pitching. It's easier to project pitching, but here it's just you still get heavy ownership on the quote unquote best pitching options, even if the gap really isn't that big. And another concern, I mentioned it with Oakland's lineup, Bassett this season, 249 expected ISO, 331 actual ISO,
Jesus,
416 actual WOBA, 390 expected WOBA, 2 left-handed hitters. Now, obviously, the A's left-handed hitters are not the best. Ryan Noda's pretty good. Seth Brown's pretty good. Kemp is free leading off. Bleday is free batting 3rd. Peterson is very cheap hitting 6th. But they're still major league hitters, and they are hitting in the Rogers Center instead of Oakland. It sets up as a spot where, I think if Bassett's one of those pitchers where, again, if you were getting away from Coors, play Bassett. He's one of the best projected pitchers. but I don't have any issue if I am stacking the Angels or the Rockies or the Blue Jays, these popular teams, saying like, okay, whatever. If Bassett ends up having a big game here, that's fine. But I'll go somewhere else. And I also don't mind, if you're going to expensive stacks, mixing in some of these A's. Again, I think it's a good mini stack team, getting Seth Brown, Ryan Noda, JJ Bleday 3-man, or Noda Brown 2-man. Like, it's a nice park upgrade against a pitcher who has been absolutely unable to get left-handed hitters out.
Even in the 9-hole, Connor Capel, it's so hard when you come out of the PCL. He's playing in AAA Vegas, but basically has a 300, 370, 450 slash line, completely dead last in that lineup. Again, this is a 10-game slate. Even though there's 14 games going on today, it's more condensed. I do find myself trying to land on some Oakland bats here as filler alongside Angels, alongside the likes of Senga, alongside the likes of Logan Webb, some of the more expensive pitchers. Seems like they're showing up in some of those builds. But one team that I'm very curious to get your thoughts on are these Toronto Blue Jays on the other side. They're more negatively leveraged than the Angels, which is wild to say on this slate, but they do have the second highest top stack odds here at Stokastic. How are you handling them today on this slate?
Yeah, I mean, the way it looks right now, I do prefer the Angels. The Angels are cheaper. They obviously they're basically double the top stack percentage. They are more popular, but they're only like 1.5 times as popular, whereas they're twice as likely to succeed. So I do prefer the Angels if you're only going to one, but the Blue Jays do still look very good. Now, Caprillion has been better against righties than lefties this year by a wide margin. 152 expected ISO to righties, 22% K percentage, compared to just a 16% K percentage to lefties, 209 expected ISO. But with the Blue Jays, it's not like you're talking about average right-handed hitters. You know, if the only righties he were facing all year long were Springer, Bichette, Guerrero, Chapman, he wouldn't look very good against righties, most likely. So you can certainly still get to these guys. And then you do have value with Brandon Belt hitting third at just 2,500 from the left side. Dalton Varsho's hitting seventh at 4K. Merrifield right-handed, but he's pretty cheap. Jansen's got some pop for a catcher at 3,400. So it's a deep lineup. It does have some value to offset the expensive pieces in Springer, Bichette, Guerrero, and Chapman. But yeah, the way things look right now, I think the Blue Jays are very, very good. I would expect to get to the Angels first.
That was always kind of something that I alluded to with lefty pitchers, where somebody will bring up, oh, he's got a 200 ISO against lefties for the season. Well, yeah, because the only lefties who show up in the lineup are good ones on specific days where they're in, like Freddie Freeman and Kyle Schwarber and guys of that nature.
Right. And I made the opposite point today in my article, where Freeland's been good against lefties this year. It's like, I do not care that he's been good against lefties when you talk about Shohei Ohtani.
Correct. I love that you made that characterization, or that differentiation, if you will. Anything else for this game?
I don't think so.
Yeah, it's a weird one. I will say, Toronto bats, still interest there.
Yeah, they look really good. It's just a matter of, the Angels to me are the priority when you talk about the popular teams.
And also, I mean, Kevin Kiermaier, offensive juggernaut in the 9-hole. And
keep in mind too, like we are projecting the Angels to be, as a stack, about 18% owned, the Blue Jays 13%. We have been seeing that trend over the last year and a half, where the actual ownership between the top few stacks ends up being really close, because people cut back on the top stack. They start playing the second and third stack, and then suddenly everybody's 15% owned.
Good point. Let's jump over to the next one here. Game 5, Milwaukee, Cleveland. He's just being Wade Miley. Shane Bieber on the other side of this one. I have a lot more interest in one pitcher than the other, but I don't know what to make of Shane Bieber's stuff here this season. Why does he have a 17.5% K rate? Why can he not? I mean, he's always given up hard hits, so that's not really a thing, but it's been such a drastic drop off here, and yet he's showing up for me. How are you handling Shane Bieber on today's slate?
Yeah, he's a tough one. I'm sure he'll show up for me as well, but this is another example where, yeah, he's one of the better pitchers on the slate, but you can point to things that are really concerning. He's striking out 17.5% of hitters this year. That's down 7.5 points from last year, but not only has his strikeout percentage dropped 7.5 points from last year, his strikeout percentage dropped 8 points from the year before that. So from 2021 to now, he has gone from a 33% strikeout percentage to a 17.5% strikeout percentage. He's gone from a 3.03 FIP, 2.87 last year, to 4.15 this year. This is somebody where, like, if all you knew about Shane Bieber were this season, you would be laughing at him being $9,400. But he's going to project well because he has been a better pitcher in the past, and any good projection system is going to include that. But when you drop off this much over 2 years in terms of strikeout percentage, it doesn't look like a fluke. It looks like he's broken or something. And he still hasn't been a total, gas can. He's not a bad pitcher. He's as talented as most of the pitchers on this slate. So I get why he's relatively popular. I get why he projects well. There are strikeouts in Milwaukee's lineup. They have a 3.5 run total. The game's in Cleveland. All that's great. But it's just when you think about it in terms of range of outcomes, again, yes, Bieber projects a little bit better than some of these other guys, but it's not by a wide margin. And you have a $9,400 chalk pitcher striking out 17.5% of hitters. I'm just not going to be afraid to go somewhere else if I'm playing where I'm playing popular bats.
I'm with you. It's an uncomfortable thing. Again, I plugged him and he's still showing up for me and I don't love it. It's one of those things where maybe I manually adjust it, but I trust it. And part of that is, once again, the historical data on Shane Bieber from last year to this year, going from a 25% K rate. The year before at 33.1%, and the Cy Young season in 2020, 41.1% K rate. I don't know. He's only 28 years old. Shout out UC Santa Barbara. He played with Cam back in the day. They're close buddies. Did you know that?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Never mind. Good talk. Glad we had it. Wade Miley, no interest?
No. I mean, he's facing the Guardians. He's 7K. So same bucket as the other guys we've talked about, where it's like, yeah, if you land on this unknown pitcher, fine. But he's actually giving up more power this year than he normally does. 224 expected ISO to righties. Strikeout percentage has never, really been his thing. So far this year, striking out 14.8% of hitters. I hadn't scrolled that far down on FanGraphs.
Yeah.
5.15 xFIP. Yeah, I mean, it's another one of those just, yeah, sure, randomness got me here. But other than that, there's no real case for him.
Yep, not a whole lot of it. 4.19 xFIP for Mr. Shane Bieber. Are we going to be targeting him with any of these lefties?
I don't really see this one as much of a priority, at least in these other games. Like when you talked about Toronto, you talk about the Philly game, you talk about the Yankees game. You might not love the matchups for the hitters, even the Baltimore and Seattle game. We've had 4 good hitters parks so far. Now you're getting to a spot where you have a bad Cleveland offense. You have a Milwaukee offense that isn't that great either. You're in Cleveland, 4-run implied total for the Guardians, 3.5 for Milwaukee. I don't really see much that stands out here as interesting.
My buddy just decided to let me know that 338 BABIP for Clark Schmidt. I don't care. I'm not playing Clark Schmidt at this ownership. Just, yeah, I mean, how would you fast forward and get live with me right now? Jesus.
Going back to the Schmidt thing, this is just the perfect example of like none of the real life stuff matters. It's just purely you're taking a. You can debate over if he is slightly above average, slightly below average. You can call whatever you want. You're still talking about that pitcher right now at 23% ownership against one of the best offenses in baseball in Yankee Stadium.
So here for that. Thank you. How about you fast forward to that one? Get off my lawn. Anything from the Guardians side? I really don't have any interest here. Unless J-Ram and Naylor just show up, because my God, Naylor batting cleanup against a lefty. The times have everything's changed.
Yeah, I was going to say, I mean, Ramirez obviously is always playable. Rosario's a decent value option at shortstop. Josh Bell's 2,600 at first base, hitting right behind Naylor, but nothing stands out here. I assume that, I'll get a little bit of Rosario Ramirez. I'll probably get a little bit of Tellez, Yelich, but nothing showing up too much, most likely.
Well, this shows up for me. Sleeper, my friends. They are the sponsor of the Deeper Dive and Live Before Lock shows here today. And what is Sleeper, you might ask? Well, if you are in a non-legal state, this is a great opportunity. And I'm just going to throw this out there because if you want to be playing home run props, it's pretty tough. It's hard to find those anywhere. How about some home run projections with some multipliers over at the Sleeper app? They do not have a desktop right now, so you have to go to the App Store, either for Android or for Apple. You got to download the Sleeper app right now. But it is a very fun view, super clean, super easy to navigate. And I repeat, if you're in a non-legal state, this is where you can get your home run exposure. They have pretty much every prop across the board that you could possibly want. They use multipliers, putting them together, and you can up to 100x your money right now. Again, 100x, hard to run into that at other pick'em sites, that's for sure. So take advantage of that promo that we have going with them right now. Promo code Stokastic. Get yourself the opportunity to check out Sleeper right now. Promo code Stokastic. Get up to $100 back when you make a deposit of $100 or more right now. So many great opportunities. How about this? Because we are talking home runs, I guess we could go over to Stokastic and look at the top of the board in terms of our player individual data, see who are the most likely players to go yard, compare them to the multipliers that we have on the board. Do you have a home run play for the people today, Adam?
Can I just go back to Stanton?
I love that. Let's take Giancarlo Stanton because they have every single game on the MLB slate and almost every single player day in, day out. It is very different than playing at some of these other sites because, again, you have multipliers for hits, for RBIs plus hits plus runs. You have home runs. You have K props. You have innings pitched, pitching out, so many things that are great additions to your pick'em portfolio by checking out Sleeper right now. So again, download the app this second, use promo code Stokastic, get that $100 first match deposit bonus from them. And thank you so much to them for their sponsorship. I think you'll really like how clean and easy it is to navigate that site. And once again, up to 100x your money. That is great. $10 into $1,000. That'd be a fun little Friday night. So check out Sleeper and thank you so much to them for their sponsorship of our show. Cool. To game number 6 we go. Brayan Bello, Lucas Giolito, and have you looked at Brayan Bello and this ground ball rate? I know it's always been there, but I mean, he is now starting to find some of the strikeouts, starting to find some of that form you knew was there. How much do you buy into recent success with him?
Why isn't this guy popular?
I don't understand. I love him.
Yeah. Because it's not even like it's just recent fluky stuff. Last year, even when he struggled, he had a really good ground ball rate. He just ran bad on where they were getting hit and, had a high BABIP and struggled with his control. This year, he's not walking guys. He's still getting a ton of ground balls. He's getting strikeouts, a 22% strikeout percentage so far this season. I mean, on this slate, that puts him behind Senga, Gilbert, Giolito, Webb, Schmidt. That is it. He's ahead of Musgrove. He's ahead of Bassett. Both of those guys pulling a ton of ownership. He's ahead of Bieber by a lot. 3.8 xFIP is better than every pitcher on this slate except for Senga. Except for Gilbert and Webb. That's it. Yep. Like, he's facing the White Sox. I realize that the White Sox do have talent, and maybe they turn things around at some point, but to date, their active roster has a 90 WRC plus against right-handed pitching. I don't know why this guy's not getting ownership.
I'm with you.
And he's cheaper than everybody I mentioned.
Yeah, I love Brayan Bello. I love Logan Webb. I love these guys with these crazy high ground ball rates because the days where they have the strikeout stuff going, you're really running good in both departments. And the days when they don't, at least there's a chance that you're shutting it down and you can run into some of these outings. And you look in the recent game logs, I think it's pretty evident. You see 7 innings pitched still, despite just 3 strikeouts against the Yankees. A really nice performance there. I think there's just extra outs when you have these ground ball rates like this. They make me want to always back them at low ownership, regardless of tag. And with Logan Webb, you have kind of the ownership coming in already, whereas you don't have it going in on Brayan Bello against a White Sox team that can definitely, in years past especially, hit lefty pitching. But against righties, that ground ball rate is still up on them. I don't have a whole lot of fear that he's going to go out there and get lit up today, too. Of kind of an easy click sub 10% ownership over on DK as an SP2. I think really interesting for FanDuel purposes today, too, knowing that getting 6-7, that's become a normal thing for Brayan Bello. It was always a matter of time. Nice to see him coming to fruition and nice to see you on the same page there. But I think the same thing could be said about Lucas Giolito, where we've seen some improvements to the strikeout repertoire. Back in his bullpen days, we were seeing some crazy good stuff, and it had been a while, but now a 24.5% K rate. He just falls into a bucket of pitchers on this slate that I think are maybe going a little bit underrepresented. How do you feel about Lucas Giolito sub 10%?
Yeah, I mean, I still like the ownership there. I think he's in that Logan Gilbert bucket as well, where I don't love the matchup. It's, a tough Red Sox team. It is a good hitter's park, 4.2 to 4.3 implied run total, but he's got strikeout stuff. And, he's got the 3rd highest strikeout percentage on the slate behind Senga and Gilbert, tied with Logan Webb. He's not great. I think he's a little bit overpriced for the matchup, but he's so similar to the guys that are getting ownership. You cannot convince me that Chris Bassett is 3 times better than Lucas Giolito today.
He's not. And he doesn't believe in, I think Giolito believes in advanced analytics.
I don't know.
I have no freaking clue, but he went to Harvard Westlake High School. I do know that. That is a good place to be from. Yep. Oh, you look at you knowing things.
Yeah.
Okay, never mind. You apparently should just move to California. You like everybody here anyway, except for me. You hope I jump into oceans or go on submarines.
Why not both?
The Boston lineup 105 WRC plus against righty pitching. How do you feel about some of these lefties?
Fine. I mean, it's a good hitter's park. It's not a great matchup. Giolito has had issues with left-handed power specifically, though. 245 expected ISO. Devers, Yoshida look pretty good. No idea why Refsnyder is leading off. I will say I actually like this lineup a bit for Giolito. Refsnyder leading off. Kike, like, do they think he's left-handed?
There's no Verdugo, that's why.
Yeah, there's no Verdugo, there's no Duran, there's no Casas.
Yeah. Oops.
Like, Giolito's not reverse splits.
No Duvall.
No, Duvall's in there.
Oh, is he? Oh, it's Alex Verdugo. That's what I meant. Yeah, there we go.
Yeah, I mean, as far as I know, Giolito throws with his right hand, and he's not reverse splits. I don't know why we're getting the Refsnyder Kike lineup, but yeah, I actually kind of like this lineup for Giolito. Yoshida and Devers are the guys that I would like from the Boston side.
If we don't get a good performance out of one of Senga, out of Gilbert, or out of Mr. Giolito here, or Brian Bayo, I'm going to lose my mind. If it's just like Bassett puts up 35 today against Oakland, I'm going to just go ballistic. I can tell you already. It's how about
Steve
the White
Miner
Sox
said Refsnyder is leading off because Giolito is terrible at home versus righties. If that's the reason, everybody in Boston's organization should be fired on the spot.
How do you feel about the White Sox? Get us out of here.
Not great. I mean, they're cheap. They're in a good hitter's park, so you have that. But we talked about it. Bayo is really good at keeping the ball on the ground. He's a good pitcher overall. 158 expected ISO to righties. Where he has struggled this year is lefties. Only a 17.5% K percentage. His expected ISO is about 70 points higher than his actual ISO at 203. Gavin Sheets at 2,200 is a pretty interesting value bat. Left-handed power, but that's the only left-handed power bat in this lineup. Andrew Benintendi has zero power. Sheets has power. Everybody else is right-handed. So speaking of lineups that set up nicely for the opposing pitcher, 26.5% K percentage against righties this year, and Bayo gets 7 of them.
Everybody smash that like button. Hit the subscribe button if it's your first time checking us out. Not everybody's as nice and good-natured as Adam and myself here on these shows, but we're going to do our best. We're going to do our best. Again, filling in for Josh Engelman today. Hopefully his internet's going so that he doesn't get... it would suck to have dead money in that $15 today, or the $5. The $5 is really an interesting tournament today over on DK. Going to be a fun one for sure. But hit that like button for the fact that I wasn't supposed to be working here right now, and I am, because I love you all, just like I love this baseball game, as does everybody frickin' else. We're going to Coors Field, my friend. Angels, Rockies, Patrick Sandoval, Kyle Freeland. The Sims loves Patrick Sandoval today. Can you talk me through it?
Yeah, I mean, I can tell you why I think he's a good tournament play.
Let's do it.
He's not going to succeed all that much. He's pitching in Coors Field, but he's 6,800. He's not getting any ownership. It's gone down since earlier. He's down to 1.5% projected ownership, 6% chance of being a top 2 pitcher. Sandoval's seen a really big drop off in strikeout stuff this year. He's only striking out about 17% of hitters. Last year, he struck out, I think it's like 25%. For his career, he's got a 22.8% K percentage. I partly think you just see his strikeout numbers come back, and he has struck out 6 and 8 guys in his last 2 starts. Prior to those 2 starts, he'd only struck out 6 guys once all season. So there is that chance that you're going to see him turn back into the pitcher he's been his whole career from a strikeout standpoint. But even if not, he's done a good job limiting power, limiting production this year. 150 expected ISO to righties, sub 100 to lefties. The Rockies lineup isn't any good. It's just another one of those, this guy's not getting any ownership and he's cheap plays, except there is actually some talent here. Like when you talk about Caprillion, when you talk about Wade Miley, guys like that, you're never there. There's no like, oh, maybe this guy actually will, maybe 2 months from now, we'll be looking back and be like, wow, Caprillion's just striking out, 25% of hitters now. That chance does not exist. You're purely with them just hoping to get lucky in their start. Sandoval at least has that where he's, he's had a half season where he doesn't strike guys out, but at every other point of his career, he's been an average to above average strikeout guy. So you have that, you have the cheap price tag, you have no ownership. That's why he's showing up. He's just another easy way to play the Angels and be different.
You think the World Baseball Classic factored into it at all?
I kind of was thinking about that the other day. I think there was a slate where Singer and Sandoval were both pitching. And it was just like I had such high expectations for both of those guys to take a step forward this year. And I remember even talking about it specifically with Sandoval during the World Baseball Classic because he was having a really good start. And I think I tweeted something like that I was just going to end up rostering him every slate this year. And then he just hasn't had it. So I don't know. It wouldn't surprise me.
I mean, there's part of me that thinks that because he was throwing like 50, 60 pitches per outing, like a lot of those starters were, they weren't getting like 90 pitches of work or anything. Part of me thinks that there might be something there where maybe he was just overextending himself. It's so hard to look at because I don't really have any numbers or anything other than the fact that he was glorious during the World Baseball Classic for Team Mexico. So just something I was thinking about because it's such a drastic drop off, 23.7% last season to 17.3%. We're looking at exactly half the sample size of last season and a 4.36 expected ERA. That's his worst since 2020. Definitely a strange phenomenon for a pitcher that I generally thought I was going to like a lot coming into this season, but the K's haven't been there. Against Coors or in Coors against Colorado might seem scary, but yeah, 63 WRC plus against lefties do the Rockies have on the year. There's no CJ Cron, there's no Chris Bryant, there's no hope if a pitcher has their stuff on against them. So I think, the ballpark is the major factor reducing that. Kyle Freeland, I can't do it in a million years.
Yeah, I can't do it with Freeland. One other thing to point out with Sandoval too is, I mentioned that this is the lone year where he hasn't had at least average strikeout stuff, and typically he's been above average. But even rest of season projection systems, the bat is at 19.2%. That's the low mark of the public projection systems on FanGraphs. Zips is at 22.3% rest of season. ATC is at 21.5%. He should get, even if he doesn't get back to the 25% from 2021, he should at least be getting back to like the 20-ish% mark.
Angels, tell the people why it's okay to get to them as chalk.
It's just a weird slate where the offensive chalk looks better than the pitching chalk. And so I fully expect to get there. The pricing is ridiculous as usual. You have Ohtani and Trout that are expensive, but other than that, sites I think didn't look at the schedule and realize this game was in Coors. 4,400 for Taylor Ward, $5K for Drury, sure, whatever, 4,500 for Renfroe. Then the bottom four hitters in the Angels lineup are 2,900 or less. We have Kevin Podlow in the lineup, no Stefanich. I know we mentioned earlier Stefanich was showing up a lot in the lineup generator. He was showing up in my sims. I had mentioned Podlow this morning. This guy actually has power, and he's $2,400 against a pitcher that doesn't miss bats in Freeland. He's batting sixth. I mean, this is a ridiculously good point per dollar play. Angels are just unbelievably good and probably end up coming in at, like, they're going to be the most popular team without a doubt, but probably correctly, if not under-owned relative to chances of success.
How about the Rockies now? Third highest top stack percentage against the aforementioned Patrick Sandoval. A little bit of negative leverage, but it is Coors Field, and there's 1 through 9 reasons you could get to everybody. Doyle in the 9-hole, he was leading off on certain slates in Cincinnati. You have Nolan Jones even left on left. I don't completely hate that in any way, shape, or form. The dude's hitting 350 with an over 1 OPS. He seems like he might be good at baseball. Grichuk against any lefty on planet Earth, sure. I mean, what are we doing with Colorado?
Yeah, I mean, they're actually projected to do a little bit over-owned, but they do offer value. The most expensive guy in their lineup on DraftKings is McMahon at 46. Diaz is 42. Grichuk's 4K. Nobody else reaches that mark. So you just have a free team in Coors Field. You can build whatever you want around it. Sandoval, like I said, not getting strikeouts, but also not giving up a lot of power this year. But it's still an appealing spot for the Rockies. Again, the way things look right now, I'd be prioritizing the Angels over them. And it's a lineup where there's not a lot individually. Diaz and Grichuk would be the two guys that I point to probably as the best plays. Tovar is a really good value option at shortstop. But from a stacking standpoint, they still look fine. It's just that right now, even though the Angels are a lot more popular, it looks like the Angels are still going a little bit under-owned while the Rockies are actually going a little bit over-owned.
Are you playing cash today? No? Okay. I was just going to ask for the people if you had built something out for Ohtani, Trout. I mean, you're looking at probably 4 or 5 hitters from the Angels side, correct?
I would assume you have 5 Angels, yeah.
Yeah, it would be kind of hard to run into it. You get Kevin Padlow sitting there, 2,400 jumping back.
I mean, actually, if you look at the best plays from the Rockies too, they're at positions that you don't really like on the Angels. You might have like 8 hitters from this game.
It's definitely in play.
Like Diaz. I'll see how it. I'll try and quickly see how it looks on DraftKings. But Diaz, Ohtani. Who would the second Drury?
Yes, Ohtani, Drury, or you're going to probably, there's a chance to play Renifo there if you wanted to. Third base, you could go to Padlow.
Yeah.
You go Tavar, shortstop, Trout.
Short. Try and get Trout, Ward in the outfield.
Can do it. You could go Renfroe, 7,600.
If you go Grichuk as that last outfielder, yeah, because you would have 5 Angels then with the way I did it. You have 6,800 per pitcher. So like probably not exactly what you're doing in cash. Like maybe you end up losing one of Trout, Ohtani. I don't know. But you can make a serviceable lineup that looks like that, where you'd end up with, I don't know, Sheehan and somebody. But the point being, this game's really cheap, and in cash, you're going to have a lot of pieces from it.
Can't wait to get to that game. But first, Washington and San Diego. Patrick Corbin facing off against Fernando Tatis. That'll be fun. You want to bet a leadoff home run? Bet a leadoff home run. Enjoy that one. Although probably a walk because everybody's a coward these days.
He's also not leading off.
Oh, he's not? What's happening?
Passan Kim's leading off.
Why? Why are we doing this?
I don't know.
Why are we doing this? This is so broken. I didn't see that lineup come in. So sue me. Either way, Joe Musgrove, he's the pitching chalk basically here on this slate. 32.2% here over on DK, highest owned here at the moment. It's got negative leverage. It's Washington though. They're terrible. How are we handling Joe Musgrove today?
I think he's the best pitcher in terms of matchup, salary, projection, everything combined, but he's still just not that good. He's 32% owned. I know in the sim that I ran for my video earlier, I got to like 15, 16%. I won't be upset if I end up getting around the field on Musgrove. He's fine and he does have a good matchup. The Nats have a 92 WRC plus against right-handed pitching this year, but Musgrove's only striking out about 21% of hitters this year. The Nats active roster has an 18.5% strikeout percentage. It's not like this is a good strikeout spot. It's not like Musgrove is a great pitcher, 4.17 xFIP. He's just a little bit cheaper than that Giolito, Gilbert, Bieber, Bassett tier, which is nice. He's in a good pitcher's park. He's facing a weak Washington team. So I do think Musgrove is the best pitching play on the slate. It's just that everything's relative and he's still not that good.
Everybody in chat, fading Musgrove. He's not good. Why off Musgrove? I've got 4% Musgrove. Lots of Musgrove there. Again, if he falls into some lineups of yours, especially if you're not going to be having any Coors Field in a specific lineup, pretty easy to click on him and get to it. But yeah, for me, it seems just falling into that mid-tier, getting away from it there.
Yeah, that's really what it is. Like, you have to keep in mind everything is relative. Everything needs to be put in context. Musgrove has his flaws, but he does project as the best pitching option on the slate. It's just that if you're going to the popular bats, there's not that much separating Musgrove from other pitching options. And you shouldn't be too worried about just going to other options.
Is Patrick Corbin another option?
That's rough. I've said it a bunch of times. From a real life standpoint, Corbin is not as bad as people make it out to be. He's not good, but I think people sort of get it stuck in their heads that he's on like one of the worst contracts in baseball. He has like a 4.5 xFIP. He's not good. He's not horrible, but from a fantasy standpoint, he is bad. 14% strikeout percentage. And on top of that, you're facing the Padres, who have nothing but right-handed power and Juan Soto, essentially. Good park for pitching, but still a 5.5 implied run total for the Padres.
Yeah, Washington, we can kind of skip over. You know what you're doing if you're playing Washington. You're stacking against the most popular pitchers. That's probably something that you do frequently. And if they fall into lineups, I still prefer, like, if I'm going against a popular pitcher, I'll get to some Oakland. You referred to Chris Bassett's lefty issue. Joe Musgrove, not really existent with him.
Wait, what?
Doesn't really have like a lefty problem.
Oh, no. He just has a mediocre pitcher problem.
Yeah, he's that guy. How about San Diego, though, with their 5.5 implied total? Are we getting to any of them?
Yeah, they look good. Musgrove actually has a higher K percentage against lefties.
He's like, that's the Marcus Stroman. Marcus Stroman, way higher K rate against lefties.
No, Stroman's way higher against righties.
Am I looking at that wrong?
At least this year.
Go ahead. Take a look.
For San Diego, Corbin, 194 expected ISO to righties, 205 to lefties. Small sample to lefties, but obviously don't shy away from Soto. But Ha-Seong Kim's cheap leading off at second base. Tatis is one of the best hitting plays on the slate. Machado looks good. Bogarts looks good. The only problem here is, again, like the Padres are more expensive collectively than the Angels, or at least very similar, and their run total is like a full run lower. So, hard to call them the top stack or anything like that, but we have them fifth in top stack percentage, ownership pretty much in line with their top stack percentage. At the very least, I like the idea of getting to, Tatis one-offs, Kim one-offs, stuff like that.
I hate when you're right. You're the worst. 24% against righties, 19.4 against lefties. Just send me out to pasture. I'm not even supposed to be here. I bet you wish I weren't. Houston Dodgers. This is where I wanted to go. Do you have anything else from that game?
No, you can get to your boy.
Okay, I can't wait. JP France, Emmett Sheehan going Houston Dodgers. This is going to be fun. And why? Well, you have a guy who got pulled during a no-hitter. Usually that's a sign of he's okay at the old baseball, but it's not just that. How about a 1.86 ERA, 0.89 whip, 88 Ks and 53 and a third over a double-A ball? Again, it's one of those things where they take a jump from double-A to the majors. You don't know how it's going to react. And now everybody has reacted to side with this young arm. How do you feel about Emmett Sheehan seeing nearly 20% ownership? I am just fine with it.
Yeah. So worst case scenario is you have a pitcher who isn't quite ready for the majors, and right now is just like a league average to slightly below average guy. But he's $6,500 on a slate with terrible pitching, and you're just saving money and hoping for the best. Best case scenario is this dude struck out 42% of hitters at AAA this year. He projects for like a 22 to 23% strikeout percentage rest of season by most of the projection models on FanGraphs. A 22% strikeout percentage on this slate is one of the best strikeout percentages you're going to get, and he's $6,500. The Astros are tough to strike out at the top and in the middle of their order. You get some strikeouts at the bottom, but no Yordan Alvarez really weakens this team. Their active roster as a whole right now has a 95 WRC plus against right-handed pitching. At worst, you're just saving money at pitcher and paying up elsewhere. But you actually have talent and upside in this guy. So it's kind of like I was saying with Sandoval, where, at least with Sheehan, there are concerns, whether it's, the Houston bats, whether it's that this guy's making his second start above double-A in his career. There's obvious concerns, but at least there's some chance, like there is legitimate upside. He can strike guys out.
He definitely can. And this Houston lineup without, it was weird because over the month of June, it looked like they had been hitting all right. You had that Cincinnati series that kind of inflated things. They lost a couple of those games at home, but they at least were scoring runs. Kyle Tucker, Yenner Diaz, he has crazy reverse splits. He's been just smashing righties' faces in at the AAA level. That's starting to show up here at the bigs. Ended up I don't know what to make of it entirely here, but Emmett Sheehan definitely going to be a big part of my portfolio. I'm pretty excited about this arm. How do you feel about JP France? Because the Ks just really aren't there, but neither is the ownership. He's one of those other sub 1% dudes.
Yeah, if he's randomly in a lineup, fine. But there's no like selling point. He's not striking out a lot of guys. He's facing the Dodgers. Yeah, there's no this is why you should play JP France.
Dodgers 110 WRC plus against righties. They have a guy named Freddie Freeman who he's good. He's very good. Peralta has come to life, 53.2% hard hit percentage. Now been higher up in that order. Even Jason Hayward been hitting the ball hard, even though it's not really resulting in a whole heck of a lot recently. I like the Dodgers as one of those teams to throw into any tournament where they're not going to be chalk, and they're definitely not chalk on this slate. Dodgers, how much do you expect to get to them tonight?
I can't stop laughing at just picturing you closing your fridge with your hip.
Why too? What happened? Who said what?
So the Dodgers are definitely interesting here. Really high upside.
Jesus Christ!
So for France, it is really interesting. Woo! Obviously the Dodgers are always a high upside stack, but France has some pretty nasty reverse splits this year. 21.7% K percentage to lefties, sub 100 actual and expected ISO, 241 expected WOBA. That's not to say not to play Freddie Freeman, Max Muncy. Obviously those guys are fine, but getting lit up by righties. 17.5% K percentage, 254 expected ISO, 373 expected WOBA. Mookie Betts looks really good. Will Smith looks great if you can find the salary. JD looks good. Vargas is cheap. Don't mind getting there. I don't have a real reason. Like, it could just be a small sample size thing on the splits. That absolutely is possible. Looking at what he throws, he's throwing his four-seam fastball the most to both sides of the plate. It is getting destroyed by righties, and it is not being hit for any power at all by lefties. It's not getting swings and misses against anybody, but my guess, I was talking about it this morning, my guess is that it's a command issue, that he probably has better command to one side of the plate. And so, like, for example, if he has better command to his glove side, he's having success getting the ball in on lefties' hands. And then when he tries to go into righties, it's leaking out over the plate and they're hitting the shit out of it. If the splits are real, that's my guess. They also may not be real, but either way, the Dodgers are a very high upside team.
Sheehan isn't exactly a known quantity at the big league level. Any interest in Houston?
Not really on this slate. If you happen to see that you're getting to Bregman, Tucker, Altuve against a guy making his second appearance above AA, clearly you're not wrong and you shouldn't change anything. Just go with it. But it's just so hard on a course slate because not only do you have the Angels in particular, and to some extent the Rockies, looking so much better than most teams, but it also pushes down the ownership where if like cores just weren't on this slate, Toronto would be way more popular. The Padres would be really popular. The Rangers would be really, like, just have a lot of these mid-range teams, their ownership would get pushed up and you'd get this really big gap between them and Houston. And then Houston would look really interesting. But as is, because you do have the core slate, you have Houston getting like similar ownership to the Red Sox and the Mariners and the Dodgers and, more ownership than Texas, similar ownership to Philly. So it just becomes, if I'm getting away from cores, I'm probably going to those other teams first.
Don't know why, but Eric reminds me of Tom from Succession. You mean the CEO?
Wow. Way to ruin it for me.
Okay. Shut up. You're such a piece. You're a liar. Absolute liar.
I'm not caught up on
statute of limitations. Stop it.
I need to start from the beginning.
Logan Webb. Oh, there you go. Logan Webb going up against Zach Davies. Going to round it out for us. Hit that like button, everybody. Really appreciate it. Even if I am a hip fridge closer. What a weird thing to be in this world. The weirdest thing
I've never seen that used. I'd never seen that like used as an insult, but as soon as I read it, I was just like, yeah,
it's incredible. I'm definitely not. I'm trying to think of what I would
probably singing while you do it.
Probably. My body lies over the ocean. My hips run into this fridge. Go ahead, round us out. Talk about Logan Webb, who's actually pulling some ownership here.
He's probably the best overall pitcher on the slate. Pitcher from a real life standpoint. 302 xFIP, 24.5% K percentage, sub 5% walk percentage. You mentioned the ground ball rate. Really, really, really good pitcher. Tough matchup. 3.4 implied run total for the D-backs. Very tough team to strike out. Above average offense. I think Webb is a good play, but it's the same thing we've talked about with Bassett and Musgrove. Now Webb is better than Bassett and Musgrove at pitching for sure, but it's the same kind of thing where it's a really tough matchup with Arizona, and you have a fifth of the field going there. If you were like 10% owned, we'd be making the same Kodai Senga, Logan Gilbert case, but he's the guy in that range everybody's choosing to go to. And I agree, he's the best of the group, but he's not 4 times better than Gilbert. He's not 3 times better than Senga if the weather cooperates. So Webb is fine, but I do think that, again, if you're playing the more popular bats, you shouldn't be afraid to just turn him into some Logan Gilbert, some Kodai Senga, some other lower owned guys.
Yeah, and we got the guys coming up next. Neil, Greg, you know him. You love him. I don't, but it's fine. I love Neil. Shout out Minnesota, hashtag Skull. Let's do it. But they'll cover all the weather for you. It's going to be good stuff. Let's round it out. Zach Davies going here for Arizona. I have no interest. I doubt you do either. But do we have San Francisco interest to round out our slate?
Yeah, I mean, the Giants are a good offense, but it's the same thing as with Houston, where San Francisco looks better than Houston. They have a 4.6 implied run total. They do have plenty of power in this lineup, but it's just a middle of the road stack because you have cores at the top. As far as Davies goes, he's Caprillion. Tough matchup against the Giants, really good offense. There are some Ks to be had. It is a good park that suppresses power. He's only 5,500. He should probably be 6,500. So again, if he ends up in large field lineups, sure, but you're not going out of your way to get to him.
Let's get ourselves the heck up out of here. Thank you to Sleeper. This was an absolute blast. We're going to turn it over to Live Before Lock. Before we do, 3 favorite tournament pitchers, Adam, and your favorite stack not named the Angels.
3 favorite tournament pitchers are probably Bayo, Sheehan, and Senga, if the weather cooperates. Okay. Gilbert, if it doesn't.
I would go Giolito in that grouping too.
That one's perfectly fine as well. I'm really interested to see where my exposures end up, because I haven't run lineups, and I hope it does what I want it to do. But that's how I see the slate. As far as stacks go, I mean, the Blue Jays, if I can't go to the Angels, but if I exclude both of them, then probably the Padres.
I love that call out. All right, y'all, we're going to get out of here. Thank you to Jordan Klein. Thank you to Sleeper. Thank you to everybody for letting me hang out here on a Friday. Don't get to see many Fridays here. Hopefully Josh has internet. It'd be great for him.
He had done register.
Yeah, I was going to say, use your phone. Use your phone. Let's get out of here. Turning it over to Live Before Lock. He's Adam. He's cool sometimes. I'm Eric. I'm going to go close some fridges. We'll see you later.
Yo, it's a new week, which means another edition of inducting you fine people into the Hall of Fame right here on the Stochastic YouTube channel, and giving out some free months of Stochastic Plus Platinum to everyone who qualified. $120 value, and all you got to do to get involved, go to stochastic.com/avatar, download the profile picture, use it wherever it is you play, and if you finish top 3 in a field of 5,000 or more, tweet your wins to us at StochasticHOF. Get a free month of Stochastic Plus Platinum. Get inducted into the Hall of Fame. And let's get into it for the week. First up, Jordan Frank. Sad that the NBA season is ending, but not a bad way to close it out. $75,000 to Jordan Frank in the NBA Showdown, final game of the season. Shout out to Jordan. Huge win there. And how about Adam Scherer back on the board? Ship My Money DFS. Yeah, you've heard of him. Second place in the night GPP 2 nights ago, and first place last night. Still got a long way to climb back, but got to celebrate him when you can. $27,500 for our boy Ship My Money. And Timothy, we'll just go by Timmy, as a matter of fact. I'm not even going to try. I don't care for the free month, and I would change the logo, but I like to have something different so I can see where I'm at quickly. But these stochastic tools off the hook, and the new Sims tool, don't even get me started. 3 days using, 2 nice wins with the new MLB Sim tool. 2,500, 4,000 there in the 4-seamer and the mini max. Congrats, Timmy. Nice wins. And Tall Tale, been a great season. Thanks to Stochastic and thanks to all the Discord brethren. $4,000 for Tall Tale. And Golden Child, FanDuel Fantasy Takedown, 1,600 to A. Baker, 82 to close out the NBA season, but it keeps going. We got more. Dave Oliver, best tools and advice, hands down. Thank you, guys. 5,000 in the Friday MLB rally, followed up by BST. BST Rans? BS Trans? $2,000. Thanks to everybody at Stochastic. Second place in the 4-seamer. Welcome to the Hall of Fame, fella. And Katzler, big night in the NBA streets for me last night. Thanks to all the advice and content. Nice. Few big wins there for Katzler. And a few more. Keith, PJ Showdown, 5K short game, $150 to Keith. And in the guard, not a full banker Hall of Fame worthy. We'll throw you up here anyway, brother. But all made possible by the PGA lineup generator. Yeah, you guys know, less than $4.50 for the first week. And we wrap it up with our friend Johnny Footballs. Hopefully this qualifies. Field size was 9,500. Love the content. The banter prior and during each show is just as, if not more valuable. Congrats, Johnny, and everyone else. Welcome to the Hall of Fame. You've now been inducted, and welcome back if you've been here before. Remember, rep the avatar, stochastic.com/avatar. Wherever it is you play, tweet us your wins at StochasticHOF. Get up here, get the free month, and get inducted, and we'll see you back here for the next one.
What is happening, everybody? Friday night, time for a live before lock to bring us into the weekend. So as you come in, like the video, subscribe to the YouTube channel. Don't forget too, we've got our podcast channel, the Stochastic Podcast channel. So go look for that. If you guys ever want to catch our strategy shows and maybe you're driving back home from work or you just don't have YouTube handy for you, go ahead and check out the podcast channel. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. And then as well, the podcast, leave a 5-star review while you're there. You might as well. It helps us out. You might not benefit a ton from us, but it'll benefit us if you leave us the 5-star review. So we would definitely appreciate that. Neil, we've got a big slate today, 10 games. Anything you want to think about or talk about that's on your mind pertaining to the slate as a whole before we start breaking it down?
Yeah, I mean, my softball game from last night obviously is what I wanted to talk about. We got the win. Thank you for asking. Yeah, I mean, clearly this is a Coors slate. If you want to talk about the slate, that is the most relevant thing. We have the Angels in Coors Field. They look pretty incredible. Last I looked, we still have a little bit of positive leverage despite the high ownership there. And outside of that, I mean, the pitching, I guess, is kind of like there's nobody you feel confident in. I think it's a slate where I'm probably going to be spreading out my pitcher exposures quite a bit. I'd say those are my two main takeaways from what I've looked at on this slate.
Yeah, I mean, the other thing too that I think warrants a lot of discussion is when I was running my lineups through our sims earlier in the day, and if you guys want to sign up, we got a link for that below. I was getting to a ton of Kodai Senga, and I was getting to a good amount of the Mets as a contrarian stack. Now, some things that have changed over the course of the day. The Mets ownership has come up, but then also the weather looks fairly shitty there, and I do think it's a pretty dicey spot. So here's probably the most amount of time it's taken me to run lineups for any given slate because I want to be prepared for the weather situation. So I built out 2 different sets of 2,000 lineups to run into our sims. One is going to be assuming I play the Mets-Phillies game, but then I set another one up where I took the Mets-Phillies game out and I redistributed the ownership elsewhere. So I kind of have it ready to click of the button for me, whichever way this slate ends up going in terms of that weather situation. Now, teams better not do something stupid like scratch somebody right before the slate starts, because then I don't know what the hell I'm going to do with the multiple CSVs that I built. But I'm leaning towards leaving the Mets-Phillies game out looking at the weather right now. How are you going to approach that game?
So currently I have it in there. It's a good question because Kodai Senga is so like he looks pretty good in the tools. He looks like somebody that we're going to want to play here. But it's a tough spot in Philadelphia. It's certainly risky even if you are going to play Kodai Senga. So I don't hate the idea of leaving it out. Maybe that's what I should just do too, so I don't have to worry about it because we have 10 games here. It seems more likely than not that it's not going to be one of those teams that, that's always the case, that it's more likely than not that it's not going to be one of those teams that you absolutely need. So I don't hate the idea. It is in Philadelphia, so it's like one of the better hitting environments. I don't know. It's currently I have it in there. I think I'm going to leave it in there, but it's certainly something worth thinking about.
It's super. Here's where it gets dicey. There is a 50% chance of thunderstorms until 9 p.m. Now, if they wait it out, there's still a chance of rain later on in the night. So there's definitely a window to play the game. I just don't know if they're going to wait or not. And it's a thing too. Like I could look at the weather and still, even then, the weather, it's a 50% chance of thunderstorms for the next, couple of hours after the game is expected to start. But you run into the issue of, all right, well, do they want to wait it out? Also, these teams, they're divisional rivals, right? So they're on the schedule for a ton of different times over the course of the season. That's a good point. So it's a spot where I really liked Senga as a contrarian pitching option earlier in the day, but I don't feel like I need to get exposure to him. And the way I'm looking at the weather report right now, I'm not saying I confidently think it doesn't play, but I don't confidently think it plays either. So I feel better about just kind of leaving it out of my player pool as of now and just taking my chances elsewhere.
Yeah, I don't hate that. And I think the last time we had a game like this where there was some kind of weather concerns, and I think I said I thought the ownership was going to come in lower than we had a projected as a result. And I looked at it and it didn't come any lower owned as a result of some weather issues. So I'm no longer even confident that the field is going to overreact to potential weather issues. So yeah, that might be the best way to gain an edge, is just to not play this game. Hope that it doesn't play, obviously would be the best case scenario. But then even if it does play, that it's not the game you need. They just had a game. No, that was a previous series that we just had a game that was Phillies game that was rained out, right? A couple days ago.
It was so funny story about that. And it was the Phillies and the Braves.
Okay.
And Eric decides he's going to enter FanDuel lineups. The audience.
I was watching the show, so I know, but you can go on. You can go on.
All right. So anyway, but the point to what I was going to bring up to what you were saying is, on that slate, the Phillies and Braves were still picking up some ownership for a game that got rained out. Like, I don't necessarily think that for sure the field is going to abandon ship here, because, I mean, we have the Mets projected to be one of the more chalky stacks on the entire slate. So I don't mind going elsewhere right now. And like I said, I've got the 2 CSVs handy in case there's some sort of change in the weather. But right now it's dicey enough to where I feel okay leaving it out of my player pool and just hoping that that is not the game that pops off.
Yeah, and I think that's totally. I mean, it's obviously like both of these pitchers are good enough that like you're not expecting either of these offenses to go off, even in Philadelphia. So I don't hate the idea.
Got a super chat right here from Brandon Wagner, and good way to start kicking off our discussion about the pitchers here. He wants to know how much of Bayo is too much Bayo. He said he played 60 lineups and he's Bayo in 40 of them. Well, that I would consider to be too much. But what do you make of Brian Bayo as a pitching option tonight, Neil?
Yeah, I would agree that is certainly too much. I would not want that much Bayo. We have, wait, am I on the right page here? Oh, I'm on the wrong page. Hang on one second. I was like, what am I looking at right now?
I like to, you're asking me, am I on the wrong page? As if I have any clue what the hell it is you're looking at your computer. Like, I can look really closely at your glasses and try to see what kind of reflection I could see.
Could you try? Because okay, I'm on the right page.
You should know better than me.
I mean, he doesn't look that amazing anyway to us. Like, he's projected for 14% ownership with a 9% chance of being a top 2 value pitcher, 12% chance of being a top 2 pitcher overall. So like, we don't even have positive leverage on Brian Bayo. I mean, I don't feel super confident on any pitcher on this slate. So it's not like I'm saying I love somebody else that you should pivot to instead of Bayo. To me, it's the kind of slate where I'm probably going to be spreading out my pitcher exposure. I guess at the same time, if you wanted to take it, it's a very risky approach, is I guess what I'd say. I don't really understand the reasoning behind wanting to take that risk on Brian Bayo, but if you think you're seeing something and he looks better than we're projecting him for, then I guess it is the kind of slate where I don't feel all that confident in anybody else. So if you wanted to, but I'm more inclined to just spread out my pitching exposure and take stands on bats instead.
Yeah, so Brian Bayo is somebody who I'm doing another run of my lineups right now, doing one with the Mets-Phillies game out of it just to see how different it looks. But before, I wasn't really getting too much of Brian Bayo. I was underweight to the field to him. And, you know, he's projected to be not crazy popular, but some ownership there. You know, you mentioned it, ownership in the mid-teens. So if you want to have a couple lineups here or there, I think that's reasonable, Brandon. But 40 out of 60 is pretty crazy to me. I think there's much better pitchers to get to that we're going to be talking about here in a second. And Neil, let's start by talking about the chalk-it pitcher, which is a couple of guys. We have Joe Musgrove projected for 33% ownership. Then we got Logan Webb at 25%, Chris Bassett at 25%. But let's start with Musgrove. He's by far the most popular pitcher on the entire slate, the only one projected above that 25% mark. He's got a good matchup at home against the Washington Nationals. He's been better than what you think he's been this year. If you just look at his ERA, much better looking underlying numbers. So overall, Joe Musgrove is still a solid starting pitcher. He's got a good matchup, but how are you going to handle him relative to all the ownership he's picking up?
Am I remembering correctly that it was also Joe Musgrove who had that Mexico City game that really brought up his
yes.
He's
given up. I remember this off the top of my head because I was talking about it last night. I went on Adam Kaufman's radio show, which, by the way, I was talking with Jordan about this yesterday. Kaufman invites me on his radio show and I say yes. And I usually have reasons to get out of it. Yesterday I didn't. So I was like, I'll go do Kaufman's show. Totally forgot about it. It was completely out of my mind. So I see a tweet come up on my timeline, like next guest on the radio show, Greg Ehrenberg. I'm stoned. I've already smoked a bong at this point. I've done zero prep. And all of a sudden I'm getting called to be on a radio show. I was on for like 45 minutes and it went fine. But last night we were talking about that game. We were talking about Joe Musgrove, and I was able to bring up the stats of Joe Musgrove, which includes he's given up 7 home runs this year. 3 of them were in that Mexico City game. And then also he's given up, I think it's 24 or 25 earned runs this year. And 7 of them came in the 3 innings at the Mexico City game. So you take those out of the picture and he's really having a solid season. So I think that Musgrove, the results have been much better than you think. But once again, what are we going to do with him in large field tournaments now?
Yeah, I mean, I'm just looking at his game log for the year. I think outside of that Mexico City game, if I'm reading this right, he's pitched at least 5 innings in every single game that he's started on the year. He's given up 4 runs a couple times outside of that game, but otherwise he's given up 3 or fewer runs in every single game. Yeah, I think that he is better than his numbers indicate, and he has a great matchup with Washington. If there is one pitcher that I'm confident on this slate, it would probably be Musgrove. I guess, Logan Webb versus Arizona. Yeah, Musgrove probably the pitcher that I am the most confident in, especially at that price tag of 8,800. So he's as you said, he's the chalkiest, but I do think it's with good reason. I think he should be the chalkiest pitcher on this slate. 34% projected ownership. I'm currently working on I'm going to use the Sims tool tonight, so I'm not sure where I'm going to end up. But if I end up over the field on Joe Musgrove, despite the negative leverage in the top pitchers tool, I'm not going to be mad about it. How are you approaching it?
Yeah, so I'm underweight to Joe Musgrove. I'm really spread out at pitcher. So I don't have any pitcher in more than 30% of my lineups, and it's just really spread out. And a lot of shots on contrarian pitchers. Clark Schmidt, I'm getting exposure to here. I'm getting some exposure to Patrick Sandoval, and then Logan Webb, Joe Musgrove. But it's like a lot of these guys that I'm getting like 15 to 20% of my lineups. And Joe Musgrove, he's one of my most rostered pitchers. He's actually he's tied for second with Logan Webb as my most rostered pitcher right now. But with that said, that still has me underweight to the field to him because he's picking up a lot of ownership. It's kind of a spray and pray approach, not even intentionally. It's just the pitching options are kind of shitty. When I uploaded my lineups, that's what ended up coming out. And I'm cool with that. I don't want to be married to any one individual pitcher for this particular slate. And then also when we talk about offenses, I'm pretty chalky at offense tonight. So we're going to talk about the Angels and how we're going to be handling their stacks. Spoiler, I'm playing a lot of them. If you guys saw the videos I uploaded to Twitter, I had a bunch of them there, and that still ends up being the case now later on in the day. So I kind of have to be a little bit contrarian to pitcher, or else my lineups are just uber chalky. So I'm underweight to the field on Joe Musgrove, and then we talk about the other guys like Logan Webb. I'm right along in line with the field. He's projected for 25% ownership. Chris Bassett, I'm a little bit underweight at 25%. Actually, I'm very underweight to the field at Chris Bassett. So of the 3 pitchers, if we're just ranking them, like I have comparable exposure to Joe Musgrove and Logan Webb, but that gets me about even with the field on Webb, a little bit underweight to the field on Musgrove. I am way underweight to the field on Chris Bassett. Of these 3 pitchers, which is the one that you dislike the most, or do you just like all of them?
It's probably Logan Webb. Not like probably he is the toughest matchup of the 3, and he's the most expensive. I don't feel super strongly about it. He does have the best top 2 pitcher odds on the entire slate, but just given the price tag of 10,400, I think it would be Logan Webb. With that said, I'm using the Sims tool, whatever the Sims. I'm not trying to get rid of my Logan Webb exposure if I get there in the Sims. He's just, he's at 25% ownership at 10,400, whereas Chris Bassett's 9,200, Joe Musgrove 8,800, and they both have the cheaper guys both have better matchups. So I don't feel strongly about it, but if there were one, it'd probably be Logan Webb, third of the 3 for me.
It's Chris Bassett for me. If I get burned by a chalky Chris Bassett, cool. That's what ends up happening. Chris Bassett sucks, though. Chris Bassett, I shouldn't say sucks. He's very, very middling, and he's expensive today, right? Like I don't want to play, and I'm happy that I'm not getting to it after I'm running my lineups through all our tools here, because I didn't want to play Chris Bassett at $9,200, and I'm happy that our data ends up agreeing with me. Chris Bassett is a 4.16 ERA this year, a 4.61 expected ERA, a 4.99 FIP. He's not generating strikeouts, 20.6% K rate. That is the lowest of his career since 2018. He's also on the older side now. He is 34 years old, Chris Bassett. He turns 35 later on in the season. And then his velocity is also down a pretty good amount. Last year, 93.3 was average mile per hour on his fastball. This year, it's 92.6. So you got a pitcher who's older, his fastball velocity is down, the results have been terrible. The matchup, I can't say anything negative about it. Like a matchup against the Oakland A's is good, even if the A's have been a little bit better as of late. But it's so much ownership going to a pitcher who's also priced up for the matchup. Chris Bassett is $9,200 on DraftKings. See, what was his salary in his other recent matchups? It's actually been kind of expected. Actually, his salary makes no sense. He was just $9,200 against the Rangers. He scored 0.25 fantasy points. Matchup before that, he was 9,000 against Baltimore, scored -6 fantasy points. So for whatever reason, DraftKings is leaving this guy really expensive when he's having a bad season. But I just don't want to play a pitcher who's expensive, is having the worst season of his career, and the field is all getting there.
Totally reasonable. I mean, he's been very hit or miss so far. Just looking at his game log, it's pretty incredible to see. As you said, 0.25 and negative 6.45. But the 2 games prior to that, 25.6 and then 35.45, then 2. So you just got to follow the pattern here, Greg. You're not very good at spotting patterns. Apparently he has 2 good games and then 2 bad games. That has been his pattern for the past eight starts or so. So I'm following the patterns, and this is clearly going to be a good game for him.
Listen, he's got a good matchup. I'm not going to say that it's impossible for him to have a good game. It's clearly within the range of outcomes, but it's just a little bit too much ownership for me. And there's a lot of pitching options. He's super expensive. So I'm going to be looking elsewhere. Then we got a bunch of other pitchers that are kind of clumped together. Shane Bieber, Clark Schmidt, Emmett Sheehan. So if you are playing anybody who's not one of the 3 most rostered pitchers, Neil, is there anybody else you gravitate towards as a lower owned option where you're going, that's the guy I want to get to tonight?
Yeah, so you said earlier that it's kind of a spray and pray approach tonight. That's, I think, like the way that I typically build it would be a spray and pray approach. Of course, I'm adjusting to using sim, so I can't say for certain what I'm going to be doing. But it's like I'll say going in, there's nobody that I feel super confident is like this is the guy that you need, because the pitchers that are sort of interested me, like Emmett Sheehan at 6,500, pretty interesting to me, but he's also facing Houston. Don't love that. That's a little bit scary. So anybody I say here is not somebody that I feel super confident in. So I'll start with saying that. But Logan Gilbert looks pretty good in the top pitchers tool. 2% projected ownership, 13% chance of being a top 2 pitcher, 5% chance of being a top 2 value pitcher. That interests me quite a bit. Lucas Giolito, I mean, I don't love the matchup with Boston, but he's coming in at 10% ownership, 14% chance of being a top 2 pitcher. That's sort of interesting. Trying to see if there is any. I don't think that there's anybody else. Like, certainly don't love going to Corbin, Caprillion, Freeland. Maybe, I mean, Zach Davies looks pretty damn good in the top pitchers tool, so maybe that's somebody that I'm going to have to consider playing some of. 1% projected ownership, 21% chance of being a top 2 value pitcher, and a 6% chance of being a top 2 pitcher on a slate where we've got the Coors slate, so maybe going to a cheaper pitcher makes some sense some of the time. Zach Davies is sort of interesting to me. Yeah, I'd say those are the 2 that I like the best of the more contrarian options, Emmett Sheehan and Zach Davies. But man, it's not a slate where I can feel super confident in any pitcher. Who do you like?
Yeah, so I mean, if I'm looking at the overall pitchers for the slate, I mean, Clark Schmidt is somebody who's standing out to me just because he is reasonably priced at $7,200. I also like that there's some ownership going to him, but nothing really crazy. But Clark Schmidt has pretty consistently, in my opinion, been underpriced, especially on DraftKings. FanDuel a little bit different because he doesn't work as deep into games, and you're relying on getting stuff like the quality start bonus. But the number one thing for me about Clark Schmidt at his price point, 23.3% K rate is really good for a pitcher who is this cheap. So he's somebody who, like, if you compare his numbers to Chris Bassett, he looks marginally better, but they're kind of similar looking. The big difference for tonight, though, is you're getting less ownership on Clark Schmidt, and he's 2,000 less expensive. So that's something to me where I look at somebody like Clark Schmidt who has decent numbers this year, but the real key there is you're getting him at a cheap price point. There's a strikeout rate there, so there's some upside from that standpoint. So Clark Schmidt is the guy in like the next tier of pitchers that I'm going to be gravitating towards a little bit. Now, any crazy contrarian pitchers or punts that you like? Are there any ones that are like sub 5% on that you like getting to? Or are there any pitchers you think offer a massive amount of salary savings that people should be considering in their lineups?
Sub 5% ownership. I mean, Zach Davies coming in at 1%, I guess, is about as contrarian as you can get among pitchers that I like. So I would say Zach Davies is probably the contrarian pitcher that I like the most. So I mean, the whole weather concern is what, like, Taijuan Walker looks okay too, but we have such weather concerns there that I don't really love it. Don't love the matchup for JP France, obviously. We already talked about Logan Gilbert is coming in at 2.4% projected ownership. He looks pretty good in the top pitchers tool. So yeah, I'd say those are the more contrarian pitching options that I have interest in.
So for me, I have one really contrarian pitcher who I'm well overweight to the field to. Patrick Sandoval is projected for, let's see, what is the current ownership projection on
2%. 2% ownership.
Just under 2%, because he's 1.7%. So that actually, relatively, that means that he's, like 15% less owned than 2%.
That's a good point. That's a good point.
Low. But anyway, it's really not. I'm just being an asshole. Patrick Sandoval. I'm going to be stacking the Angels a lot today. So there's a little bit of correlation with a win bonus there. Not something I think should matter all that much. But he's a pitcher who this year, 4.08 ERA, 4.37 expected ERA. Not great numbers, but also not terrible. He's pitching in Coors Field. That's obviously something that's a little bit of a concern, more than a little bit of concern, a big concern. But there's a pretty big track record on Sandoval being considerably better than what he's been so far this year, at least in the strikeout department. And if you look at all the projections, Zips, Steamer, the bat the rest of the season, they're expecting the strikeouts to come back for Patrick Sandoval. And I tend to think that's going to be the case because he's always been a guy that struck out about a hitter per inning. Been a downtick this year. You're getting him at no ownership. And once again, super volatile play. This could easily go sideways. If you tell me Patrick Sandoval scores -12 fantasy points, I'd be like, yeah, that's within the range of outcomes. I can see how that happens. But at the same time, too, super cheap. I don't really love the pitchers on this slate. I do think there's going to be some positive regression coming his way, especially because his swinging strike rate is still decent this year at 11.9%. That should indicate that he's going to have a higher than like an 18% strikeout rate. So Sandoval at 1.7% projected ownership, that's something I'm going way off the board with. And if I have an Angels stack and Sandoval is the pitcher in that lineup, the whole lineup is contrarian. It doesn't matter how chalky the stack is.
That's a good point. And I mean, despite the game being in Coors, like obviously we're all a little bit afraid of Coors, it is still like one of the best matchups you can have against Colorado. Like as far as the lineup that he's facing, looks good in the top pitcher stool. So yeah, it's certainly a name that doesn't jump out at me because I look at Coors and I'm like, not playing a pitcher in Coors, but like that's probably bad reasoning. Like he's certainly 6,800 at low ownership. I like it. I like that call.
And then the other part of this too is because I've had people ask me about pitchers in Coors over, not recently, because there hasn't been a Coors Field game recently, but on some recent Coors slate. So, like last week or whatever it would be, where people were asking me about rostering pitchers at Coors. There's a couple of things I want. I want a cheap pitcher who's actually decent, and I want the Rockies to be getting ownership in that spot. So I'm picking up a little bit of leverage by playing that pitcher. And that is what we have. We have the Rockies projected to be the third most popular offense on the entire slate. We've got the Angels are number one, and there's kind of tiers to this because the Angels are projected for nearly 20% ownership as a team. Then we got the Blue Jays 12.5% ownership as a team. And then you've got the Rockies coming in at 8.5%. And then the Mets are the fourth most popular offense right now. I'll refresh to see if that has changed at all. But at least that was the last data run I looked at. That's what it was standing at. So if I'm not, oh, by the way, they went up. They are now 9% projected owned, the Colorado Rockies as a team. So when you got a team that's that popular, you're also getting a little bit of leverage by playing the pitcher. So once again, don't feel terrific about it, but the data kind of indicates the low ownership on Sandoval, the high ownership on the Rockies, the fact that Sandoval doesn't totally suck. I think this is one of the rare spots where I really could pick out a pitcher at Coors Field and be like, there's reason to get there.
Yeah, I 100% agree. I really like that. I want to give you an update. So I finished my Sims, and this is very concerning for me. I had 81% Kodai Senga in my first run of the Sims, which I think is one of those things that you kind of need to manually like think about when you are using the Sims tool that like, okay, we haven't projected for low ownership, but like there's good reason that we haven't projected for low ownership. We project him as though he's obviously going to play, his regular game. So probably need to adjust somewhat on them. I'm going to give him a negative boost in the Sims because definitely don't want to risk 81% Kodai Senga here.
Yeah. And I mean, like I said, I've got two CSVs. One took the Mets and Phillies game out entirely. And that is right now the lineups. If the slate was starting this second, I would be uploading the lineups that didn't have the Mets Phillies game in just because of the weather concerns.
Sure.
Anything else you want to talk about at pitcher? And if anybody has questions for us in Discord, at me, and I can answer those questions. But Neil, is there anything else you want to bring up at pitcher for DraftKings? And then if not, we can look really quick at the FanDuel pitchers as well.
No, I think that we've covered pitchers fairly well. I think, I don't see anybody else that we need to talk about that we haven't already.
All right. So then if we go and look at the FanDuel slate, the top pitchers a little bit more spread out, where we do have still Logan Webb, Chris Bassett, Joe Musgrove. They're projected for Musgrove, 21% ownership, Bassett 18%, Logan Webb 15%, and then there's not another pitcher on the slate that's even projected for double-digit ownership. So let's look at this two ways. Number one, if you're playing one of the chalky pitchers between Musgrove, Bassett, and Webb, which one do you go with on FanDuel? And then we'll try to find a contrarian pitcher we like. But starting with that first question, Musgrove, Bassett, Webb, you're playing one of them on FanDuel. Who are you rolling with?
It's a little bit tougher because Musgrove is getting the highest ownership, 21% ownership. I guess that's true on DraftKings as well. He's still the cheapest. I probably just eat the chalk with Joe Musgrove, to be honest. I don't think I would go contrarian there. How about you? Who would you go with?
Yeah, so for me, it's going to be Joe Musgrove. The ownership is much tighter on FanDuel than it is on DraftKings. If you're looking at those top three guys, they're all relatively comparably owned, all three of them within 5% of each other. So with that in mind, I would go with Joe Musgrove. I was playing one pitcher on FanDuel. He's also a really easy cash game choice, in my opinion. If you're playing a cash game, that's where I think you go. But if you're going off the board, not playing one of those three, which most of the field isn't doing. Anybody else who play outside of those three, you're going to be contrarian a pitcher. Who is your contrarian pitching option for FanDuel, Neil?
Interesting on FanDuel. Let me think about this a second. I might go all the way down to like Zach Davies if I were going contrarian, just because we like it's this kind of slate where we might not see more than one or two pitchers put up a score that you like really even want to have, and just being able to save a lot of salary on a pitcher who Zach Davies, I think he could put up 30 FanDuel points, and the top pitcher could be 45, and on FanDuel that's within one home run, like, and with all of the expensive bats that it would allow you to get to, I could see myself going to Zach Davies if I were going to go off the beaten path, that pitcher on FanDuel. Yeah, I'd say that might be my answer. If I were creating a lineup, I would probably just do like two great stacks and then go to a cheap guy like Zach Davies. And of the cheap guys, I do think he's the best option. So it's probably Zach Davies for me, just going completely off a totally different route with the lineup. How about you?
Same way that I went on DraftKings. I'm going to be going with Clark Schmidt, $7,700. He offers some salary savings. All the analysis I put out before when it comes to him being a cheap pitcher who has considerable strikeout upside. Also, at $7,700, for reference on how cheap that is, the pitchers who are priced around him on FanDuel, you got Dane Dunning at $7,800, and then right above him, it is Wade Miley at $7,900. So then other pitchers who are cheap on, FanDuel is or pitchers who are cheap on DraftKings, just more expensive on FanDuel. So like Emmett Sheehan, for instance, he's $8,400 on FanDuel. Really hard to consider him at that kind of salary. So I like the salary savings on Clark Schmidt. Also somebody I like for FanDuel purposes. We got a super chat. Love getting these from Jose Morales. So I guess Ace of Spade was busy today. So now people are like, oh no, how are we going to get our tiers information? Jose Morales has left the super chat. DK tiers, please. Yes, sir. I'll help you out right here. Neil, you want to pull up Josh Engelman's Twitter account there? By the way, you could get to a lot of the Angels today in tiers, which I think is something that makes a whole lot of sense to do. I actually want to rerun lineups and just take the Mets-Phillies game out and see what stuff looks like for me then. Oh, is the entirety of... Oh, yeah. So in tier 2, it's Adolis Garcia and all Phillies. So if you take the Phillies game out, the answer is just going to be Adolis Garcia. All right, that aside... Tier 1, we've got Shohei Ohtani and Mike Trout, both at Coors Field. I'm going with Ohtani over Trout. Did Josh have a lean there, Neil?
Josh did not do it today.
Oh, so. Okay. Josh did not do it. I thought I liked a tweet of Josh's putting it up earlier.
Unless maybe I'm missing it. Prize picks, then 20 hours ago.
All right. Yeah. I guess I just liked other tweets of Josh's. So I'll just read through this. So Shohei Ohtani, I think, makes the most sense in tier 1. Tier 2, it depends how risk averse you want to be with the weather, because I think Bryce Harper is the best answer should the game play. But if you don't want to go with any of the Phillies because of the weather, Adolis Garcia is your only option because he's the only player who isn't on the Phillies in that tier 2. So tier 2, I'm going to say Adolis Garcia. Tier 3, another one that's pretty spread out, but I'm going to go with Vlad as my favorite overall option in tier 3. Tier 4, a little more correlation with Vlad. I'm going to go with George Springer. So we got a little Blue Jays stack in tier 3 and tier 4. And then tier 5 and tier 6, we go right back to the Angels. Brandon Drury in tier 5. And then tier 6, we have both Taylor Ward and Hunter Renfroe available to us. I lean towards Taylor Ward over Hunter Renfroe. But to summarize that, we get a 3-man Angels stack. Tier 1, tier 5, and tier 6, headlined by Shohei Ohtani. Then tier 3 and tier 4, we go with a Blue Jays stack with Vlad and Springer. And then tier 2, if you want to go with the weather game and you want to roll the dice, I go with Bryce Harper. But if you want to go with somebody who has no concerns with that, go with Adolis Garcia, and he's the only other player not in that game there. All right. Let's go and build some lineups in the lineup builder. I'm kind of curious to see what ends up coming up here, Jordan. I have a feeling it's going to be a lot of Angels.
Oh, yeah. I did my lineup generator video earlier today, and it was a ton of Angels. I think I got a lot of Luis Rengifo on DraftKings, and then on FanDuel it was a little bit more evened out. But yeah, on DraftKings, just a ton of Rengifo.
All right. So Jordan, go to DraftKings, make contrarian lineups. And if you can, try to delete some of the lineups with Senga in them. If he pops up. If that's too complicated, they'll just save a bunch of them. We can talk about it afterwards. So I'm kind of curious to see what we could get to, because I know that if we build contrarian lineups with our projections, it's going to be a shit ton of Senga. Oh, Jordan was quick. He removed a bunch of them, I see there. All right. Angel stacks aplenty. Actually, less of the Angels than I was expecting. I thought we were going to get to like an insane amount of Angels. This is still a lot, but like not as much as I thought it was going to be.
Yeah. I had so as I recall earlier today, every single one of the bats in the Angels lineup was above 20% for me when I did all lineup types. So I didn't just do chalky, didn't just do contrarian, did all lineup types, and I had at least 20% of every Angels bat. But yeah, this is more evened out than I had it earlier, which I like. I prefer.
It is a lot of Angels, but it's not like we've had some slates where we've done this and there'll be, like a really good Guardian stack in a good spot. We'll get to like 70% of them. It's not quite that crazy. It looks like we have, 30-ish% of Angel stacks. And then some other players, we got Starling Marte in there, Francisco Lindor. But, I would try to, for me personally, I don't feel great about the weather spot in that game. As far as pitchers, we got to also really spread out here. Looks at no pitcher north of 31% on. Joe Musgrove with 31%. Brian Bayo, we did get here at 31%. Logan Webb, Logan Webb 25%. You scroll down a little bit, Jordan. Chris Bassett there at 25. There, Senga popped up in 19. Dane Dunn, really spread out at pitcher.
Which is, that's certainly my preference. I think, as we've talked about, like we want to be spread out a pitcher on this slate because we don't feel super confident in anybody. Not a surprise that it does come out pretty spread out, and don't mind it.
Yeah, the only thing here that I would be wary of playing that much of the Mets, just due to some of the weather concerns, but everything else here is looking pretty good. A lot of George Springer is a one-off, it looks like, there as well. So let's go build some FanDuel lineups, Jordan. Also, if you guys haven't signed up for the lineup generator, couple reasons to do it. First of all, it's super easy to use. Also, we've had some big wins in the Sims tool. We had Neil himself the other day.
Yeah, I got third in the contest. The $3 20 max contest. I put 20 lineups in all directly from lineup generator and got third place. And
were you curating them at all? Were there some you were like saving and discarding?
Usually I do. That night I actually did not. I'd taken over the Stochastic MLB Twitter account, so I just and I got kind of busy with that, so I didn't have time to really curate it, and I just went with the first 20 lineups that I went to. I did all stack types, all lineup types, and I got third, and that was it was I had a sweat. I thought I was going to get there. All my guys fell flat for like the last 3 innings of all their games. It was kind of disappointing, but happy with that result.
And that to me is also kind of the perfect people to be using the lineup generator. And then of course we also have our Sims tool, and we have you see here Barry Watts came in second week using the Sims, had his first 5-figure win, won $10,000 in the 4-ball, the 4-entry max there over on DK. And those with only 2 lineups. He didn't even use all 4 of them. He only used 2 of them. But when it comes to the lineup generator, I do think what you were just mentioning, Neil, is kind of the ideal person to be using it, right? Like you come home from work, you don't have time to listen to our show, don't have time to maybe hand build lineups or do any of your own research. You just go out, you open up the lineup generator, which you get access to for less than $5 when you sign up using the link below. And then it's just going to build some lineups for you. If there's ones you don't like, you could discard them. Some you like, you could save. And it's an easy way to get some lineups built for you, especially if you are in a pinch for time. And by the way, a lot of people in chat excited. We've got congrats, Neil, from Nice Kevin, Larry C. Nice, Neil. Samson. Nice going, Neil. And then Malakar saying Google it, which I don't really know exactly what that is related to. But either way.
So first of all, I want to say I appreciate all of you guys. I also have to say I do see Ryan Carter in the chat also, who you may not know the name, Greg, but just 2 nights ago, Ryan Carter won the main contest on DraftKings. Just pulled up. Thank you, Jordan. Won this contest with a single bullet, and that was he's told me that he used lineup generator. He did not just use one of the lineups that he gave him, but he used it to kind of take a look at the slate, see who looked good on that slate, and then he hand built this lineup using lineup, which I think is a really sharp way to use it as well. You can just use the lineups like I did, but also a sharp way. It's a great learning tool if you just want to like learn what good MLB DFS lineups look like, or if you just want to see on a given slate who looks good on that slate. So congrats to Ryan also.
Yeah, and it's something that I think that's, well, at least that's the goal of what we're trying to do. When I'm showing you guys these lineups on screen, the overall goal is I'm trying to highlight like, oh, these are the players that based on our data here and the lineups before, these are like some of the players that we get the most exposure to. And you can take some of these players and you build some lineups around, which I think it seems that's what Ryan did. And but one lineup takes down the $15 relay throw that night. Pretty sick stuff. But that's a really good way to use this tool too, is even if it's just something you want to use to figure out like which players are data is recommending. If you're looking at the top stacks tool, the top pitchers, so they're not exactly sure what to make of it, this kind of summarizes it for you and just be like, hey, based on all this data, these are the players you want to be getting to. Let's go. So by the way, we're going to build lineups for FanDuel now. We just did it for DraftKings. Now time for FanDuel. Go all stack types, Jordan. And once again, contrarian lineups. I want to see how much of the Angels we get to going contrarian here. Kevin Clunan wants to know, can you run a FanDuel? That is exactly what we're doing right now, Kevin Clunan. We're running a FanDuel. Save some, discard some. So when it comes to FanDuel, I have a feeling we're going to get to a ton of Blue Jays and Angels. Yes, sir. Renfroe, Springer, Trout, Drury, Bichette, Vlad. Then you got Fernando Tatis as a one-off, Padillo, Ward. Then we got Senga as a contrarian pitcher, Varsho, Jansen. So other than Tatis, it looks like 10 or so of our most rostered hitters are from either the Angels or the Blue Jays. I don't get the Blue Jays pricing on FanDuel. Like, why are they so cheap?
I don't get it either.
It makes zero sense.
So I got to say, Greg, so after I suggested Zach Davies and people were not happy with that suggestion for FanDuel as an off the beaten path pitcher, I went to see what kind of lineup I could make on FanDuel if I used Zach Davies or just built out a lineup using the best bats that I could find. And I had 6,400 left over. So it was between Zach Davies and what's his face? The Rockies pitcher and Kyle
Freeland.
Kyle Freeland. It was between those two. Were the only two pitches available. But like, you know, if you just play like the best bats from Los Angeles or put like the best bats together between Los Angeles and the Blue Jays, you can play all the best bats from both those teams if you put in somebody like Kyle Davies. Yeah, given the prices, because the pricing is too cheap on the Blue Jays also.
Yeah, the Blue Jays pricing makes absolutely zero sense over on FanDuel. I mean, just look at some of the players that we're getting the most exposure to here. George Springer is $2,900. Bo Bichette is $3,200. Vlad is $3,000. Varsho is $2,900. It's broken price tags.
Yeah, they're way too cheap. Mariners Orioles delayed. Is that a concern for you? Do you think you're going to adjust anything?
No, it's one that. All right. So if I go back and look at the Baltimore, also I'm going to refresh. Let's do a weather update here. All right. So I've got the Philadelphia weather pulled up in front of me. Same exact deal. 50% chance of rain until 9 p.m. Then there's a little bit of a window with like a 30% chance of rain, then back to 50% chance of rain at midnight. So Same risks apply when it comes to Baltimore weather. All right.
Jorge was asking me about that game earlier, and I thought, you don't want to come to me for weather. You want to go to Weather Greg when you've got weather concerns.
Yeah. You just want to go to me Googling stuff. Yeah. So it looks like we've got rain for about an hour in that game, and then it clears up and it's good the rest of the night.
Perfect.
So I think the late start totally makes sense, right? They don't run the risk of them going out there, the weather gets bad, and then they have to, restart the game, pause or anything like that. I think this is the ideal scenario for the game to just play normally, is the game starts like 45 minutes late to an hour late, and then they're all good to go.
Yeah.
Got Ongo Geblogian in the YouTube chat says that the tarp is off the field in Philly. Yeah, I'm not saying that it's definitely going to get canceled. I'm just saying there's risks associated with it.
Good sign.
Was there anything else terms of weather? No. All right, so we got everything summarized there in the lineup generator. Once again, if you guys want access to that, less than $5 when you sign up for the first time using the link below. Really easy way for people who are startup DFS players or new to the MLB DFS game to go out there and build some MLB lineups. Now, let's also talk about our sponsor for today. Haven't brought them up yet. Sleeper, who no free squares today, but we have seen a lot of really good free squares to take advantage of over at Sleeper. So a reason also to just download Sleeper app. You make a deposit using our link below, get up to $100 bonus on your first deposit. And then also, you could always sign up for our MLB Pick'em package, where you're going to get projections for no outs advantage, for prize picks, for underdog. Now, Sleeper might not be included with that, but a lot of times the lines are similar, so you could compare them and see what it is that we are projecting best. But let's go ahead and talk about stacks now, Neil. Before we head out here, I want to know, what are you going to be doing with the Angels? Massively popular tonight. Projected for the most ownership on the slate on DraftKings, nearly 20%. No team is even close. Are you going to be overweight to them at the field or underweight?
It looks like I am pretty close to the field, to be honest. I'm just looking at my exposures to Angels players in the sim tool. I guess I can look at my stacks, can't I? That's somewhere here.
Yeah, so if you click, if you look at exposures and then you click stack exposure, it'll tell you what percentage of your top lineups are stacks of each team. So I have less Angels exposure than I did earlier, but not by much. I was north of 30% earlier. I'm now at 26% of the Angels and then 20% of the Blue Jays. There's the only two teams I have north of 10% exposure to, but I like both of them. I like getting to the Angels. I like getting the Blue Jays today. I'm really contrarian at pitcher, which I think enables me to be chalkier at offense. Angels, Blue Jays, playing a bunch of them, playing the chalk at offense. I'll be getting some contrarian stacks. We'll talk about them in a second. But I'm overweight to both the Angels and the Blue Jays. Did you figure out what you are getting with them there, Neil?
Currently getting 20% Angels 5-man stacks, 5% Angels 4-man stacks.
And then what kind of lineups are you uploading? Because are some of them 4 stacks, or you just built some lineups that are just 4-man?
Yep, I have some. So I built out, I did 800 5-3 lineups, and then I did 400 each of 5-2, 5-0, and 4-4. And I just ran those in the simulator tool.
Yep, I don't think that's a bad way to do it. I only had 5-man stacks for today. The main reason being is that I was trying to prepare myself for the weather situation. There's only so many permutations of different sets of lineups that I could run when I'm going to be hosting the show. I would love to be able to sit here and be like, hey, I did 10 different CSVs with different lineup types and incorporating the weather into different things, but not totally realistic. So I just ran 5-man stacks. I'm getting to, like I said, the Angels the most, Blue Jays second most. I'm overweight to both those chalk teams. Where are you landing on the Blue Jays, though? Because you are getting to a good amount of the Angels, a little bit less than me, but still slightly overweight to the field, but fairly close to it. How about with the Blue Jays?
The Blue Jays, I have 18% 5-man stacks, 2% 4-man stacks.
Okay. And then are there any teams that you are coming in underweight to the field to? Any teams that are really popular that maybe you think are not in the best spot and they're worth being underweight to?
Let me see who else is popular, because I have to. So we've got Colorado and the Mets are both kind of chalky. Colorado, the Mets, and San Diego, the 3 other chalkier stacks.
What did you end up? Because we've only got like 10 minutes to go here. So what did you decide is the way you want to play the Mets Phillies game?
So I still have it in my player pool. I'm getting to, I have 5% exposure to the Mets as a 5-man stack, 2% exposure to the Mets as a 4-man stack. I ended up leaving it in. I don't feel super confident one way or the other. The only thing that I really did is I keep on boosting lowering my exposure to Kodai Senga, because I don't want to have that much of it. Like, I don't want to have Kodai Senga in 50% of my lineup. So I keep on boosting him downward. But otherwise keeping it in there, not getting to a ton of the game anyway. So not a huge concern here, but I'm getting to a little bit. Actually Philly, I've got to 7% 5-man, 3% 4-man. So I actually do have a fair amount of the game. Looks like 17% total of that game in either 5 or 4-man stacks.
And then if you go back and look at your pitchers, because you hadn't run this earlier, is there anything showing up different than what you expected as far as your pitcher exposure is concerned?
Yeah, so Kodai Senga, as I said, when I first ran this, I got 81% Kodai Senga. I've been lowering my exposure just because I don't want to take on that much risk. Other than that, I mean, I'm getting to it's extremely spread out for me. So I guess which I guess is not a huge surprise, but it is Kodai Senga number 1 still, followed by Clark Schmidt. I have 27% exposure to. Joe Musgrove 19%. Those are my top 3 pitchers. So it's kind of crazy to see how spread out it is. I have 17% Emmett Sheehan. Yeah, it's I guess as expected in some ways that I am very spread out at pitcher.
Yeah, so same with me. Really, by the way, Patrick Sandoval, where did you land on him?
Good question. Let's see.
Because he's the most contrarian pitcher I have the most exposure to.
Should I be doing a search here? I'm not finding him in my exposures.
Okay.
It's possible I just don't have it. Let me see if I actually got to any in my crunches.
So if I go ahead and look at some of the questions we have in Discord right now, a couple of them coming in. First, GG123 wants to know, is a 5-man Texas stack too cute for a single bullet in the 254 max? Yes. So the main reason being is that Clark Schmidt is one of my favorite pitchers on the slate, which has me not liking Texas a ton. If you wanted to be the contrarian team that I think would make the most sense for single entry, if you're playing one lineup that I consider is Oakland, going up against Chris Bassett. Oakland is, in terms of my ownership right now, I have the most of the Angels. I have the second most of the Blue Jays. And then I have the Oakland A's, my 3rd most rostered stack tonight.
Interesting. So I would answer that question differently, to be honest. I don't think it's too cute. And I mean, it is high dollar, so it's putting a lot of risk on there, but just because you like Clark Schmidt, I still think that Texas looks good in the top stacks tool to some extent. They are 5% chance of being in the top stack at 2% ownership. They're expensive. So I think that my answer would be a little bit different there, even though I'm not getting to a ton of Texas. I would say I don't necessarily think it's too cute for single entry.
Yeah, I just kind of have to answer based on what my exposures, are,
sure,
and have that as a guideline of what it is. But I mean, especially the way I like to play some of those fields, if Chris Bassett is going to be super popular and I don't know who your pitchers are in there, GG123, but I'm not saying you have to play Oakland. I just wouldn't play Texas. Wouldn't be the lineup I go to there.
Yeah, and it probably wouldn't be the lineup that I go to either. I guess what I mean is, if you really like your lineup, like they do look like they've got some positive leverage in the top stacks tool. So if you like your lineup, I wouldn't necessarily switch it.
And the next question here is from Einstein. He wants to know thoughts on the Guardians today. I am hardly getting any exposure to Cleveland.
Yeah, I don't think I am either. Let me take a look.
Yeah, not somebody I'm really getting to.
I have 0 5-man stacks, 3% 4-man stacks of Cleveland.
Yeah, I'm 2% in total in terms of stacks of the Cleveland Guardians. And let's see, what is it about Cleveland has me not really getting to them as much? So Cleveland, they have, what are they're like tied for the 4th lowest top stack odds for us on the entire slate. It's a spot against Wade Miley that's not awful, right? Like Wade Miley is okay, not great. It's just a really nondescript spot in general. They're picking up a little bit of ownership, 3%. So they've got higher ownership than they have top stack odds. And there's just so many teams that are in really good spots that it's a team that I ultimately didn't end up getting to there, Einsteinium. See, any other questions? Nope. So getting back to some of the stacks, Neil, are there any really contrarian stacks you were noticing that you're getting exposure to?
Let me see who I'm getting. So I have, by far the most I got to is both Toronto and the Angels. I got to 8% 5-man stacks of Texas. 9% 5-man stacks of Philly, which I think they're partially going to be kind of contrarian just because of the weather concerns. Outside of that, I don't think I have more than 3% of any. I guess I have 5% Colorado. So really not going super contrarian outside of Texas, I guess, is a little bit contrarian here. But yeah, playing a lot of pretty chalky 5-man stacks. I guess as far as 4-man stacks go, still not really contrarian. Still, it's Texas, the Mets a little bit, but not especially contrarian with my stacks today. I guess I'm going a little bit more contrarian with my pitchers.
Well, since I'm not gonna change at this point. There's 8 minutes to go until lock. I'm gonna be rolling with no Texas and no Mets for me. So the team I have the biggest stand on is just not having the Mets. The Mets are projected for a really, really good amount of ownership right now. We've got the Mets for 7.1% ownership. So we have them as the fourth chalkiest team on the entire slate. I have none of them. So if the Mets go off, I am absolutely screwed. But with that said, I mean, they're so popular to the point where, like, I don't mind them not being in there. Other teams as well, we've got the Rockies projected for 9% ownership. So the two teams I'm most underweight to are the Mets just by default by not having them, and then the Colorado Rockies, them being 9% owned, not getting to them. What do you do with Colorado? Keeping in mind here, don't hurt my feelings. I've got some Sandoval exposure.
Yeah, it sounds like I am underweight to the field on Colorado. And I looked at my my crunch, Greg, and of the 2,000 lineups that I made, I only had 2 lineups with Sandoval in them. So I guess not a surprise that I didn't get to any in my actual exposure. I like the play. I just he wasn't showing up in the crunches that I was doing, so I didn't get to any Sandoval. Yeah, I'm underweight to the field on Colorado. It sounds like I have 5% Colorado 5-man stacks, 3% Colorado 4-man stacks. I guess I do have 8% Colorado 3-man stack, so I guess they showed up a little bit more as my secondary stack. But yeah, in general, I'd say I'm probably underweight to the field there.
Yeah, let's see. So Colorado, I landed on 3% of the Rockies, so I'm undercutting them in a pretty significant way. My rooting interests are very strongly going to be aligned with the Angels. I'm rooting for the Angels offense. I'm rooting for the Angels pitching now with Patrick Sandoval. Going to double check chat to make sure we didn't have any questions in there.
I like Jenna Sandy's comment. I'm stacking Neil's softball team. Yeah, another 18 runs last night. I just had to get that out there.
Nice.
Thank you for stacking the team, Jenna.
By the way, I just saw Jordan. You got visitors over there? Look at you. Look at you.
Do they want to come on the show?
Yeah, no, I don't want them on the show either. I don't want guests on the show either. So Jordan has his really cool Kobe Bryant picture because Jordan was friends with Kobe Bryant, and Kobe wrote him a nice message in the signed picture. And I could see people walking around in the
I see it now.
So anyway, getting to the slate here, a few minutes to go until we wrap up. Any other thoughts you have here, Neil? Anything we haven't touched on that's going to be important to you that you want to bring to people before we get to lock?
I feel like we've done a pretty good job covering all of the best stacks on the slate. Let me pull up I'm on the FanDuel top stacks for some reason. Yeah, I mean, it really is. It's an interesting slate in that I feel like I'm getting more contrarian with pitchers rather than bats, which is not my usual approach to DFS. And usually the Sims tool kind of is in line what I usually try to do, which is play contrarian stacks and get a little bit chalkier with the pitchers. So that's kind of the cool thing about using the Sims tool, is being able to see how it does kind of guide you in a certain direction based on the given slate. I mean, we talk about all the time, like typically more willing to get chalky with pitchers, get different with bats. And today is a day where it's like, yeah, kind of don't have a ton of confidence in any of the pitchers. Definitely more confidence in stacks like the Angels in Gores. So kind of cool to see the Sims tool guiding me in a different direction on a slate that is pretty different from most that we see.
Yeah, we've got Einsteinium asked what we think about the Padres against Patrick Corbin. I'm really close to the field on the Padres. I have them in 6.7% of my stacks. It's a really good spot, right? Patrick Corbin is super, super washed. By the way, the contract that the only reason that Patrick Corbin still has a spot in the rotation for the Nationals, because the Nationals are a rebuilding team. They've been rebuilding for a couple of years. There is no reason for them to continue to put Patrick Corbin out there to just get his ass kicked every day. But he is finalizing or working through the final couple years of a 6-year, $140 million contract where he just has gotten his ass kicked basically every single season since signing that. He has a 4.89 ERA this year, which, believe it or not, is his best ERA in like 5 years.
Is it really?
But the underlying numbers are a train wreck. He's a 6.31 expected ERA. So there's definitely some numbers that are pretty alarming here with Patrick Corbin. But at the same time, too, the Padres are somewhat popular, and there's a lot of other popular stacks and overweight to the field. So you just run out of line. You run out of lineups to get overweight to the field to everybody. So I'm almost exactly in line with the Padres. Like I said, I have them in 6.7% of my lineups, and they are projected for 6.3% ownership. So a 0.5% more, but I'm going to be fairly aligned with the field. One thing I will add, though, is I think my most rostered one-off for tonight is Fernando Tatis.
I have 17% Tatis as well. You see the super chat from Charles Moran?
What was the... Oh, just one right here. FanDuel GPP, Bayo and Renfroe, or Musgrove and Rengifo. That's going to be Musgrove and Rengifo.
Same.
And no other questions.
Ooh, dong pick. That's a good... Wookie brings up, we should maybe do a dong pick here.
Yeah, we could do a dong pick, and then we could... That could wrap us up for the day. By the way, we did get somebody in chat here. It was Kenneth Woodhouse. Said Corbin was pretty good in 2019. Yeah, that was a really long time ago. He had a 3.25 ERA, but a 4.06 expected ERA. So there was some luck on his side. But yeah, like that was the last time he was decent. All right. Home run picks. Neil. No Coors Field. Outside of Coors. Who are we going? Who's hitting a homer today?
I mean, top of the board here, which I just cheat and go straight to the top of the board in the top batters tool. We have Rafael Devers with a 40% chance of hitting a home run tonight. I like those odds, so I'm going Devers here. How about you?
So the way I like to do this is I look at my exposures. I try to figure out who I'm overweight to, and it has to be somebody who's fairly likely to hit a home run. So Fernando Tatis, I mentioned before, he's the hitter that I'm most rostered as a one-off. He is my most rostered non-Angels hitter today. So I would like to see him hit a home run. And Fernando Tatis, is he too good to qualify, Neil, or can we pass him as a home run pick?
No, the whole rule is just, I mean, that's a new rule this year. His home runs are tough to hit. So just outside of Coors, I thought about going to Tatis since we had been talking about him. He looks good in the tools also. But yeah, he qualifies. You can do it.
All right, Tatis, I'm picking him to hit a homer. We've got some homer picks from chat. Let's see. We've got Juso Dashing, Cruz, and Soto. So we picked 2 homer picks.
All right.
Jake Swale said Josh Jung. Obi-Wan said Ohtani. Ohtani's probably he would be unfair to pick.
Yeah, it's in Coors, so we can't.
But it's also Ohtani in Coors. I'm curious. So here's
lefty on lefty. You think Ohtani's more unfair than Trout?
I'm going to pull up. I mean, he leads baseball in homers, and he's in Coors Field.
Yeah.
If I go to just FanDuel, the home run odds, you know what? Trout is plus, where is it? Trout is plus 220, Ohtani's plus 265. So maybe not unfair. Maybe not too crazy. Trout actually does have shorter odds than Ohtani by a little bit there. Either way, thank you guys very much for watching. If you've not done it yet, like the video, subscribe to the YouTube channel. Don't forget, check out our podcast network. If you guys ever want to listen to one of our strategy shows on the go, go check out our podcast network. Subscribe, leave us a 5-star review. We do appreciate it. Hope you guys have a great weekend. Good luck with all your lineups tonight. See you back here next week.